แล้วลือจะพิมพ์ว่าเที่ยงคืนครึ่งทำไมวะมาตีหนึ่งก็ตีหนึ่งดิเฮ้ยกลัวเดี๋ยวมานะครับ
In Vessel of Hatred, we travel south to Nahantu, a region with both deep ancient jungles and vast sprawling plains. It's the last stretch of land in Sanctuary's eastern continent, and we've packed it full of experiences for every type of player.
สวัสดีทุกคนครับ
In this expansion, there's a whole lot to explore under the dark canopy of Nahantu.
Discovering Nahantu
is the southernmost region of the East
Nahantu เป็นทวีปทางทิศตะวันตกตะวันออกทางใต้ที่สุดเราเคยไปมาแล้วใน Diablo ภาค 2 มีพื้นที่ใหม่มากมาย6 Legion 4 จะเป็นทีมจังเกิลและ 2 เป็นทีมผาหินแดง
When you first arrive in Nahantu, you're in this place called Lingering Hatred. This is
จุดแรกที่เราเข้าไปใน Nahantu คือ Lingering Hatred
amongst the branches high above the jungle floor.
Imagine a thick canopy that the light is just barely poking through.
จินตนาการป่าดงดิบที่แสงไม่สามารถผ่านต้นไม้ลงมายันพื้นได้มอนสเตอร์ใหม่ลูกน้อง Mephisto the Hollows เกิดมาจากความมืดของขุมนรก
Humans have ventured into this deep part of the jungle where there's all this poisonous plants and flora. The dregs actually started experimenting
มอนสเตอร์ประเภทใหม่
with eating these hallucinogens, and it put them into this aggressive psycho rage.
เป็นคนที่กินพืชผักที่ได้รับผลกระทบจาก Hatred Mephisto แล้วก็กลายพันธุ์เป็นมอนสเตอร์ที่เราต้องสู้ด้วยแต่จริงๆมันดูดีกว่าตอนที่เราดูครั้งที่แล้วถูกปะเพราะครั้งที่แล้วมันเป็นมอนสเตอร์เดิมมีแรดด้วยดูดิ
Imagine getting up above the land. Those gigantic walls have pockets inside where monsters could live. It offered up a lot of opportunity to bring back a monster family like the Lacunae.
We're bringing them back in a new way. Here's a fully fleshed out monster family with multiple classes.
What a more brute force looks like, what a caster looks like. They are very much apex predators, and we're
ขอบคุณ
definitely
คุณคามาโดทันจิโร่มากสวัสดีคุณเรนด้วยคุณ LSD คุณอัลซ่าไว้เจอกัน
area called the Skittering Earth.
The name alone makes your skin crawl.
And it's bug infested, and you can see how
มันดู
bugs
ดี
have
ว่ะ
destroyed
ผมคิดไปเองหรือเปล่า
jungles and kind of input their influence on it. Within the Field of Giants, you have these giant corpses of these long dead demons that humans have begun to mine away at for their
ดูตัว
resources.
เมืองดิเป็นซากดีมอนที่เคยตาย
They're also toxic to the land around it.
The notion of massive demons walking Sanctuary 1,000 years ago is really thought-provoking.
Plateau's also got just this beautiful color scheme to the lighting. It's really
เดี๋ยวอันนี้เหมือน
and then horrific at the same time. You
เหมือน
know,
เมืองเดิมไปหน่อยทหารรับจ้าง
The Mercenaries in Vessel of Hatred are a group of people who we like to describe as ordinary people with extraordinary skills. They have
คนธรรมดากับสกิลที่ไม่ธรรมดา
fight against the demons of hell.
And there's 4 mercs that you can collect over the course of the campaign. Starts with Rahir, a blacksmith and a shield bearer, is a more defensive fighter.
Mercenary 4 แบบที่เราสามารถสะสมได้ระหว่างเล่นแคมเปญราเฮีย
You meet him early on in the campaign, and he's one who introduces you to the Mercenary network. You end up finding acquisition quests for 3 other mercs that you can find throughout the course of the story.
Subo, the drunken archer, is going to
Subo,
work really well
drunken
for
archer.
people who want someone who's out
Hey.
of the main melee, in the back,
Hey.
offering utility and that kind of range support.
เราแทงค์ให้
And we have
แล้วเขาก็ยิงอยู่ข้างหลัง
Ariana, a berserker crone, who's a melee combat
Warayana.
fighter, close range. She's got a
Oh.
really cool combat meter, a massacre meter where you need to keep killing enemies to get the meter to be filled.
She's got a bunch of really interesting utility skills that you can kind of build in.
Finally, we have the demon child Aldkin, who's a
Aldkin.
magic user who can transform himself from human form to demon form and join you in combat.
There's this really great reinforcement ability where you can take one of the mercenary skills and attach it to one of your powers so that when you use that skill, it calls them in to do a specific skill.
With the Mercenaries for Vessel of Hatred, one of the things we are expanding on is the skill tree. For Diablo 3, you had a very basic type of mercenary, but this time you can actually push a little bit more into the skill tree and
Customize
make the
mercenary เราได้
the way you would want to play.
Going through each mercenary progression arc and outfitting their skill tree so that it's complementary to your character build, I think that's where the fun in the mercenary system really lies.
ไม่ซื้ออดเล่นนะครับ The Dark Citadel
The Dark Citadel is a new endgame feature that's coming in Vessel of Hatred. It's an entirely cooperative player experience. All the mechanics within it are based around you working together with your party members to solve the challenges and face the first Khazra hordes within.
One of the outcomes of the Mage Wars is this giant crater and all the souls that were kind of lost in it from those wars.
The goal of the first Khazra, who are kind of the original Khazra, they're using the powers within the Citadel found within this crater to perform experiments to try and bring back their dark god.
เพราะเถอะไม่เคยเล่นไม่ได้ครับ
People have started going missing. They head into the Khazra region, they disappear, never to be seen again. So it's clear that whatever they're planning
ลง
is
ทรี
about
นั่น
to
ได้
come
ครั
to
บ
fruition, and your job as the players to get in there and stop it.
Citadels are a place where we take what is the best part of Diablo, combat, and we test it in a different way, which is adding in cooperative mechanics that you have to manage on top of that.
For example, a boss has an attack, and as a player, you have to collect an item that allows you to reflect the attack back at him. So there's a little bit of a Twitch level mechanic there where you actually have to time your reaction
Great boss.
shot. What's interesting about it is when you get multiple people in there, we're each responsible for reflecting that shot once, so we all have to sort of master the timing of that move. You can't do that kind of thing without coordinating as a team, and that's sort of the example of what
ผมว่าดูส
Citadel
นุกดี
gameplay feels like.
When
Dark
designing the
Citadel.
Citadel, we designed a lot of really cool bosses. And so one of the things that we did is we took that design and made like armor sets for each of the classes. That way you feel like you took their armor and you feel like you're wearing a little bit of them after your victory.
We also have a currency that's dedicated to Citadel where, as you play through, a vendor can be interacted with to buy custom cosmetics that are unique to the Citadel. You can play with 2 people, but the ideal experience is for 4. In order to facilitate that, we've built an all-new Party Finder feature. And the community has
Party
been
Finder.
pretty vocal about wanting this for a long time. It made a lot of sense to us to pair it with this new Citadel mode.
It really is an activity that's geared towards people who love to play together with their friends or with strangers and enjoy that cooperative gameplay. I cannot wait for players to get into the world. I'm really just excited for people to see all the little hidden storytelling elements that the team has fit in.
There's interesting things to find and see and discover around every corner, and it's just a really great experience getting to explore Nahantu.
เดี๋ยวดีมอนวิงมัน
Hello,
มาตั้งแต่เมื่อไหร่
Diablo community. Welcome to another Campfire chat. This is the patch 2.0 Campfire chat for PTR. As you guys can see, we're in a little bit of a new environment. We're all doing this from home. We had to do a quick last-minute pivot about 24 hours ago. I was struck by some con flu after Gamescom, but I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our production teams behind the scenes. Lucas, Jade, and Rich, they made a quick
งานเกมรอบที่แล้ว
allow us to do this and for us to be safe and to be able to still give you guys this exciting information for patch 2.0. But to lead us off, I do want us to do some quick intros for everyone here on the panel. So Colin, would you like to start off the intros?
Yeah, sure. I'm Colin on the design team.
Hello, I'm Aislinn Hall. I'm a systems designer with a focus on live balance.
Hey everyone, I'm Charles Dunn. I'm a class designer working on the live balance for Diablo 4.
ทุกคนกำลังแนะนำตัวแต่ผมมีปัญหานิดนึงโอเคเมาส์กลับมา
Awesome. So we got a whole panel here, way more than what we normally have because
นอกจากชาลส์ดันมีคนอื่นผมไม่เคยเจอเลยนะ
we do want to jump into things pretty immediately, but I did want to recap really quickly. Obviously,
ขอรีแคปนิดนึงนะครับ
at Gamescom, we made some really
ที่
big
Gamescom
announcements for Vessel of Hatred, where we
announcement เกี่ยวกับ
mercenaries
Vessel of
that would
Hatred
come to
ระบบ
Vessel of
Mercenary
Hatred, along with how that system works with like reinforcements. It's like a new take of how mercenaries play within Diablo, especially since Mercenaries has such a storied history within the franchise itself. And of course, we also
ระบบที่มีมานานแล้วก็เอามาย้อนดูกันนิดนึง
City, and the Dark Citadel, along with the Party Finder feature that players will be able to actually partake in with Vessel of Hatred and use that for Dark Citadel and other features within the game. We do actually have a blog up on Diablo4.com that does do a good deep dive across all of those specific items, so you guys can actually check that out. But we have a packed agenda today. This will be a long one, so we hope that everyone will sit down and grab a snack and join us as we talk
สตรีมวันนี้
about
ยาว
some pretty large systemic changes that will be coming with Diablo
เปลี่ยน
4,
แปลง
along
ระบบ
with some new stuff that we'll be sharing as well that will
Paragon
be coming with
ที่น่า
Diablo
สนใจที่เรารู้กันมาแล้ว
so we're going to start off with some progression updates. We're going to move on into
ดู
some
progression
class balance
update
changes,
คาร์ดบาลานซ์
some quality of life updates,
QOL
and then we'll kind of cap it off with a cool new announcement that will be coming with
เรื่องที่จะประกาศ
so,
ใหม่ เกี่ยวกับฟีเจอร์ใหม่ที่จะเข้ามาใน
Colin, I
ซี
know
ซั่น
you guys
6
want to jump into some of these big progression changes that you guys were talking about last week, so take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And I'm sure everyone
คอลิน
know
ขอดูหน่อยมีอะไรดี
the big surprises at the end.
None whatsoever.
So yeah, right. So yeah, let's jump into
progression
So when we launched the game, we had a sort of vision for the
ระบุ
game
ปัญหาว่าอะไรที่
once where you'd sort
นะครับ
of traverse through these
ไม่ยั่ง
world
ยืน
tiers and
นะไม่สเกลไปกับอายุของเก
sacred
ม
items rarely, and then you'd begin
ดับเบิลดาว
ancestral
นะครับ
items when hopping
ปักหมุดลงกับคอนเทนต์ที่มันสนุก แล้วก็ทำงานได้ดีอยู่แล้ว
more and more, and as we've gotten feedback, that necessarily hasn't really been super fun. So we've sped up a lot of the progression to sort of get you into that space that where you feel powerful, where you have autonomy over your choice in terms of difficulty and challenge and reward. Diablo is all about that progression, right, and sort of lasting and feeling efficient. So we wanted to take a step back after looking at itemization. We've added a ton of itemization progression that we think is feeling pretty good. There's a lot of ways to customize your character. There's a lot of ways to progress your itemization. And we wanted to look at other aspects of the game. So that came in the form of like what hasn't aged super well. What are the things that we really enjoy and we see that you all enjoy?
แล้วคอนเทนต์อะไรล่ะ
and
ที่
doubling down on that.
ดูแล้วจะอายุไม่ยืน
those
ขอบ
things
คุณ
are
คุณเอซี
difficulty
137ที่สมัครเป็นโฮลดิม
and,
ครับผม
overall just character
มี
progression,
ความเรียนสายใครกันนะ
Paragon, glyphs, etc.
ระบบ Paragon ระบบ Glyph
taken the approach of like really doubling down and embracing again what has been really fun. Right?
มาขอดูว่าระบบที่รีเวิร์กมาแล้วของ Paragon กับ Glyph จะมีโครงเป็นยังไง
Right? Profane Mind Cages is awesome when you can stack it to 3 and you can hop into those hell tides.
Offense My Cage สมองไหลที่พูดถึงสแต็กได้3 ครั้ง ดับเบิลดาวลงไปต่อ
Nightmare Dungeons, Infernal Hordes, really pretty much every endgame in the system at this point has a tiering system associated with it, and we think that's like pretty indicative of like what has been fun, and we want to embrace that. And part of that is that idea of I can push really hard to get more efficiency. Part of that's conquering milestones, right? It's really good. It's a ton of fun to hop into World Tier 3 early. I think I
ดับเบิลดาวลงไปนะครับทำให้มันชัดเจนขึ้นไปอีก
latest release just to see if I could do it, and it was a ton of fun.
milestone แต่ละ milestone เวลา
sort of
ผ่านคอนเทนต์ยากๆเหล่านั้นมีอะไรให้โชว์ว่าผ่านแล้ว
in multiple ways, feeling super
วิธีการได้พลังของตัวละครหลากหลายมากขึ้น
look at in terms of making this better is alting. We made a change to make it so that the mythic units can be equipped at level 35, and if you've done that,
ตัวละครที่2ที่3ที่4จะสนุกขึ้นทำยังไงถึงจะสนุกขึ้นแต่Uber Unique Mystic Unique ได้ตั้งแต่เวล35ทุกคนเห็นแล้ว
That being said, we've added tons of sort of power to the equation, and we wanted to make sure that we also gave you more autonomy to sort of challenge yourself with all that new power, and we're adding a ton of new power in the expansion as well. So to cover it again, right, we want to look at expanding the progression in other areas of the game come patch 2.0. So with that, Aislinn actually
Character Journey Leveling Up นะครับผู้เล่น Progress
I do. Thank you.
ผ่านเลเวลต่างๆในตัวละคร Monster Adjustment มีการปรับปรุงนะครับให้เข้ากับความยากของพลังผู้เล่น
We in fact have a topic screen here because there's so many things regarding progression that we're going to be talking about today. So the way that we're approaching this presentation is we're basically going to be bringing you through what a character's journey would actually look like. Starting by talking about the character journey and then talking about some difficulty tier changes that are coming, and then going deeper into, how you're going to be gaining more rewards from those said difficulty tiers. So yeah, without further ado, let's simply jump in
ขอดูหน่อย
and get started with the character journey.
level adjustment level 1 ถึง 100 speed
Okay,
เป็
so
น
some changes
character
coming how
level
you're
แล้วก็
gonna be
paragon
leveling
level
up.
level 1 ถึง 50 เป็น
There's gonna be
level
a
ได้
level
skill point
adjustment
max
first of
level
all,
อยู่ที่
coming to patch
60
2.0. Right now in the live game, you know, you go
Okay.
from character level 1 to 50. Those are your skill point levels. And then every level after 50 is a Paragon level where you're earning 4 Paragon points per
Okay.
Paragon level. We're going to be splitting those out in patch 2.0. And so you're going to earn Paragon points, which are going to be separate from your character level. Levels 1 to 50 represent those character levels. And there's also going to be a new max character level, quote unquote, of level 60. And that means that you are going to be
ปรับ
earning
ลงมาเท่ากับ
10
WoW เมื่
more
อก่อน
skill points from what
ทำให้
you
มี
had
สกิล point เพิ่ม
earning,
ขึ้น จาก
pre-patch
เดิม
2.0.
ไปอีก 10
There's also going to be a reimagined pace.
เพสใหม่ของเกมความเร็วใหม่ของเกมนะครับ normal pace
difficulty tiers that are being added to the game. More on that.
pace ก็จะ slow เหมาะสำหรับผู้เล่นใหม่ hard expert
lower
penitent
difficulty tiers are going to be offering
ยากขึ้น
you a slower pace.
รางวัลก็ดีขึ้นตามไป
player, you just want a very casual, chill experience, but you're going to be able to bump it up if you want to. Like if you're, you know, engaging with tempering, you're engaging with all these systems that are making your character stronger, and you want something to test that against, we're aiming to give that to you. And these difficulty tiers are going to be offering you improved efficiency, improved rewards, and the goal is to improve your pace if you can blast through these difficulties.
Yeah, this is a
Now,
lot
there's
like the
เรื่องที่ปรับปรุง
Yeah.
มีอะไรบ้าง
mind cages,
เมื่อกี้
right?
เห็น
Like
นะครับ
we
เลือดผู้
sort of
เล่นดาเมจ
heard,
ที่
yeah,
ท
we
ำเกราะ
heard you like mind cages, so we
มี
put
ผ
it
ล
in the game systemically. Like
ลามไปถึง
from
พารากอน
whispers
ด้วยเดี๋ยว
to
ต้องดูการปรับ
Helltide
พารากอน
to literally everything in the world. Like maybe you like doing dungeons. And really, it's sort of like giving players that choice to do what they want, and it's not just Helltide now that can push that difficulty.
Yeah, totally. Like we were just playing on the development team, and we were playing in Helltides and, you know, playing with mind cages, and we were like, this is great. Like I want to just be able to do this or like have this option available
ส
to
แต
me,
ท
like
ต่าง
basically
ๆ ที่พูด
whenever
มา
I'm
ไม่ว่า
playing.
จะเป็นตัวเลือด
So that's a
ดา
big
เม
part
จ
of these
เกราะ
things.
นะครับจะทำให้อ่านง่าย
Moving
ขึ้น
on here
อ่านง่าย
to
ขึ้น
the number adjustments. So as a lot of you
เข้า
guys
ใจง่ายขึ้น
found in footage,
รู้ว่า
yes,
แคปที่เท่า
there
ไหร่
is a pretty substantial number
เท่าไหร่คือเยอะ
adjustment.
เท่าไหร่คือน้อย
So a big part of this is we want to make sure that there's room for growth. And we're adding a lot of player power in patch
แน่นอนว่า
2.0 and Vessel of
Patch
Hatred.
2.0 เนี่ยผมว่าน่าจะเป็นการ
And we
เซต
want to
อัพ
make
พื้น
sure
ฐาน
that
ใหม่ เพื่อให้
numbers
คอนเทนต์ของซีซั่น
don't get
7 ซีซั่น
so
8 ซีซั่น
crazy that we
9
cannot
สเกล
even
ไปแล้วมันไม่แบบ
fathom them, right?
ตันจนเกิน
And
ไป
so
อาจ
a
จะ
big
ต้องมา
part
ลื้อ
of
ฟื้น
this
เรื่องดาเมจกัน
is
ใหม่ 10 ล้านอาจจะแรง
giving us a good starting point in patch
5 ล้านอาจจะกลายเป็น
2.0
แรง
where we can afford to grow numbers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
ไม่เหมือนกับสมัย
It's,
D3
it's
ที่ดา
really
เมจเป็น
important, you know, to
บิลเลียน
have
บิลเลียน
numbers
ทริ
that
ล
are
เลียน
like,
ทริลเลียนเนาะ
when you're like doing damage numbers to see ones that are meaningful to you, right? If you're increasing your damage like even 10x, but it's taking it from like an 8 or 9 digit number to a 10 digit number, it's almost impossible to see that kind of growth in player power. So with numbers that are more readable on screen, that A makes it much more obvious when you're
เรา
getting
อาจ
more
จะกลับ
powerful,
มาเล่น
and
เกมดาเมจหลัก
the
ร้อย
game
หลัก
as a
พัน
whole
กัน
easier to kind of comprehend.
totally.
Yeah, and it's important to note that like this is relative in that we're not slowing you down in any way. This is purely sort of one of those adjustments that we're making to ensure that you can have more growth in the end game. We're not at the top end nerfing things like crit chance or CDR. Really, this is all about having actually like sort of what we set out to do when we launched the game is have more grounded numbers for longer. That's not to say that you aren't going to get insane in the deep end game, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're still going to have a lot of power to game. And yeah, finally, just going back to this first bullet here on this slide, we're going to talk more about Paragon later, but for now we're going to focus on some other things. So sit tight.
ตีมไลน์
Okay,
มอนส
let's
เตอร์
talk
เฮล
about
แล้วก็
how
ดาเมจให้
monsters
เข้า
are
กับซิสเต็ม
changing.
ใหม่ที่จะมีนะ
So we've streamlined monster health and damage in a pretty big way. We took a
แล้ว
look
ก็
at
ไม่ให้มัน
how
สเกล
monsters
ไป
gain health and how they gain damage over
ให้รู้ว่าโอเคมอนสเตอร์
different
เลเวลเพิ่มขึ้น
difficulty
เลเวลหนึ่ง
tiers.
เลือดเพิ่ม
And
เท่า
we've
นี้
really
ดาเม
like
จเพิ่ม
honed
เท่านี้
in and kind of universalized our approach
มิน
to
เลียน
how
อีลิท
they're
บอส มี
gaining
ฟิก
power
ซ์ HP
throughout your character
นะครับ
experience.
มากกว่ามอนส
And
เตอ
this
ร์ธร
is
รม
going
ดา
to be applying to all
100%
monster types,
200%
you know,
ส
normal
มมุติ
monsters, minions, which are elites, little buddies, elites themselves, and of course bosses. And all of these monsters now have health that's relative to their normal monster counterpart on any given like difficulty tier. And what this does is it really helps smooth difficulty progression and the difficulty of any experience that you're currently in. Secondly, we have some changes to
Monster scaling.
monster scaling. So monsters
Monster
are going to
scale
scale
ตาม level
to a
พิษ
pit tier, and we're going to talk more about that as well pretty soon
เว็บ
too.
แนะนำ build mobility
So sit tight. And the big thing here is that monsters are always going
Icy
to match
Veins
player
macro
level
ครับ
now. So on live, we have a world where monsters can be, 100 levels offset of you and anywhere in between. And that can be fairly hard to understand. And so a big part of this pass is kind of removing that element of the game so that we can focus on what difficulty we're currently in
combat
and using
tuning
that as the judge of how hard or how easy or wherever
ลดโอกาสการเกิด
the
one
content
shot
you're
ปรับ
currently
เลือด
is,
boss
you're currently in is. And finally, we have some pretty cool combat tuning changes. So we've taken a lot of looks at, like the moment-to-moment combat pacing in the game. And monster mechanics across the board have been adjusted to really hone in on player momentum. You're here to slaughter demons. We want you to move quickly through the game. And we don't necessarily want monsters to be slowing you down, especially normal monsters. And to achieve this, we've reduced instances of getting one shot like out of nowhere. And we've also adjusted boss HP
เหมือนบางเกมนะ
so
วิ่ง
that
วิ่งอยู่
they're
ก็
not
โดน one
quite
shot
as grindy after you're moving in from, after blasting down AoE packs in the pit, for example.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
definitely
this is
a
something
pain
we-
point. Oh, great
Oh,
call.
go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, just saying, right. That's always been the pain point in the pit so far. Is like, hey, you're really strong. You blast through most of the dungeon, and then you get up to the boss, and the boss takes, 5 minutes or more. That's just like such a slog. So we're definitely making sure it's a more consistent experience. In a given difficulty tier, you're going to have a more consistent experience across boss and other portions of the game.
Yeah, and we've already taken a lot of steps towards this. In one of the previous seasons, we set it so that you wouldn't get armor cap penalties as the monster is leveled higher than you, right? So this is really just sort of consolidating a lot of the, I'm going to get shit for the Blizzard math, on the back end to make sure that like a lot of the things are really being reworked on the back end to address the
ใน
problems
โคมิ
we
เนียน
see
เล่นคนเดียวไหว
online
ไหม
with
ไหว
the crazy
ครับ
exponential scaling of boss health from like 4 different multipliers and the crazy exponential damage that some of the monsters are getting. It's like yes, the corpse bow, of course, dying in one shot from off screen. A lot of those things should be much more consistent as you're climbing through those difficulty tiers, which we're going to talk more about in the future or in this presentation.
Very soon, in fact.
ระดับความ
Like
ยาก
right now.
ระดับ
Difficulty
penitent
tiers.
hard expert extreme อะไรสักอย่างที่
Let's
พูด
talk
เมื่อกี้นะ
So
World Boss Hell
this is our
Tide พิษ level
beautiful
1 ถึง
Blizzard
200
illustration, if you will, of
Art by
current day
Colin.
art by
Gotta-
Colin.
gotta-
Thank you very much.
Gotta call out Colin.
โลกใส่อะไร แอนดาริลครับ
We've got
We're going to
the
get art for this.
This is art. What are you talking about?
yeah. This
is
is
beautiful.
Modern art.
นี่คือระบบความยาก
yeah,
ต
you
อน
can see
นี้
we
นะ
got
ไม่ใช่อัน
the
ใหม่นะ
big bone boss. Very, very sad at the current state of things up there. So what this is basically illustrating is that there are basically brackets right now on live where
จ
various
ริงๆ World
content
Boss
is
ต้องสเกล
relevant.
ลงมาหน่อยนะ
You have world bosses that stay relevant for a certain amount of time. You have Helltide that stays relevant, maybe a little bit longer than world bosses do.
ไม่เล่น
Then
โร
you
แวน
have
นาน
world
ขนาด
tiers
นั้น
1 and 2. Then you have world tier 3, which is, very sad. Sorry, world tier 3.
Yeah.
And then
Pull
world
out
tier
a
4.
magnifying glass, you can see it.
Yeah. Maybe if you look really closely, you can see how long it takes to go through world tier 3. And then world tier 4, which has like a bit of a tail, but still pretty short. And then we compare it to like where our character's power currently exists, which is, you've got level 1 to 100. And then of course your journey throughout all of the pit tiers. And basically what this is illustrating is a lot of these content types fall off. World bosses don't stay relevant forever. Helltide doesn't stay relevant forever. The world tiers you're living on in the open world don't stay relevant. And eventually it simply becomes about running the pit. And that's the place where you can judge your character's strength. we don't necessarily want the game to work that way. We want a lot of activities to stay
โอ
fun
เค
and
ไม่อยากให้มัน
interesting
เป็นอ
and
ย่างนั้นแต่มันเป็นอย่างนั้น
engaging
ไง
for
ประ
as
เด็น
long
อะ
as possible.
เราจะแก้ไงดีอะ
And so to accomplish that, we've got some pretty big changes coming to
ขอดูหน่อย
difficulty tiers.
ต้องตั้งใจดูไหมเนี่ย difficulty tier
So let's dive
analogs
into the
ใหม่
meat and potatoes of
pit
this.
tier
Talking about pit
เข้ากับระดับความ
arbitration.
ยาก 5
That's
พิษ
just a fancy
ต่อ
way of
standard
basically
difficulty
saying that the
มี
pit
4
is going to
difficulty
be something behind the
15 per
scenes
torment
that's
มี
setting the
4
pace
torment
of all difficulty in the game across all content types.
เพราะฉะนั้นก็จะมีทั้งหม
So
ด
pit tiers are going to
80 พิษ
match
tier
difficulty tiers. There's going to be 5 pit tiers per standard difficulty, which is just encapsulating 4 new world tiers pre-level 60, which are normal, hard, expert, and penitent. And then there will be 15 pit tiers per torment difficulty, and there are going to be 4 torment difficulty tiers, 1, 2, 3, and 4.
ระบบใหม่เดิมมี 4 world tier ตอนนี้มี
monster
8 world
health,
tier
damage, and intensity from the pit tier that is associated with that difficulty tier. And I know that's a little complicated, but we're going to have some supporting stuff to show what this means a little better pretty soon. And I do want to call out intensity here. Colin, do you want to talk about monster intensity raising between difficulty tiers?
Yeah, so intensity is something we
ความ
played
เข้ม
around
ข้น
with
ของ
in the
มอนสเตอร์
base
ที่
game
เพิ่ม
and
ขึ้นตาม world
sprinkled out
tier
throughout the game. But what intensity is it's a backend system that controls monster aggressiveness as well as monster intelligence. So by aggressiveness,
intensity
it's
คือ
things
ค่า
like
ที่
they
ชี้
attack
ถึง
faster,
ความ
they have
aggressive
lower
ของมอนสเตอร์และความ
cooldowns,
ฉลาดของมอน
they
สเตอร์
move faster.
วิ่งเร็วขึ้น
Intelligence is they predict your
ใช้
movement
ได้
more, they'll face you more, so if you know it has a big swing, it's actually going to try and
max
track you
level
a
อ่ะ
bit more
ไม่ได้
accurately.
60 แต่หมายถึง max
So it's
level
not
ที่ได้
just the
EX
health and
ที่ได้
damage
ที่
that's
ได้
going
ตัว
up in these difficulty tiers. The
สกิล
monsters are
point ให้
actually
60 ครับ
becoming a little
ผม
bit
ไม่รู้ว่า
more
max level
laid
ตอนนี้
out
กลายเป็น
in
60 จาก 100 หรือเปล่า
we think that feels pretty
แต่หมายความว่าเราจะได้สกิล point เพิ่มขึ้น
sort of scaling through the new difficulty system that we have.
อาจจะใช่
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is
totally.
something we do have on the live game, but you know, in the new patch 2.0, you're really going to feel that difference. Currently, you feel a little bit of difference in between the different world tiers, and that's just going to be magnified. And your moment-to-moment combat it's not just going to be higher numbers. The moment-to-moment will feel different and harder at these higher torment difficulties.
Yep, they're going to become bigger jerks as you ascend difficulties.
มอนในแมปก็จะโหดขึ้นด้วยไม่ใช่แค่
All
มอน
right,
ในพิษ
so let's
ต่อ
talk
ไป
about difficulty gating. So this is basically how people are going to be
difficulty
moving
gate
through these
ตัวละคร level
difficulty
60
tiers.
พิษจะ unlock
So the pit is going to unlock once you hit character level 60, which is the new maximum character level.
โอเค การันตีละ 60 max
So pit tiers associated with standard difficulties are going to unlock immediately, which is pit tiers 1 through 20. You're going to be able to challenge all of those immediately once you're max level.
เราตัวละคร level 60 ปุ๊บ
You're
ลง
going
พิษ
to
ชั้น
need
1 ถึ
to
ง 20 ได้
beat
ทันที
pit tier 20 to unlock the first torment tier.
ถ้าอยาก
Once you
unlock
beat pit
พิษ
tier 20, you're
torment
allowed to go into the
ซึ่งมี
overworld
อีก
on
60 ชั้น
torment 1. And then, as we see here,
ต้อ
there
ง
are
ปลดล็อก
15 pit tiers
เทียร์
per
ที่สูงที่สุด
torment difficulties. So to unlock torment 2, you would then need to progress through the pit and beat pit tier 35, at which point you can now go
อย่างที่บอก
into
ต่อไปนี้
torment
พิษจะมี
2 and all
80 ชั้น
other activities, so on and so forth. So this is basically creating a... Sorry, go ahead, Colin.
Oh, I was going to jump in and say, like, what's kind of interesting is, like, Torment 1, you can think about as World Tier 3 today. And what we're sort of doing is essentially saying, now that level cap is 60, you actually can find some of the best items in the game very early, right? Imagine if you were able to just start finding the best items in the game in World Tier 3. That's really sort of what we're talking about here. We're really speeding up when you can actually get to the end game where we've added things like the pit, we've added things like nightmare dungeons and more end game activities for you to engage with, and item modification systems. So it really is sort of getting you, all right, I'm in the end game. I'm going to start looking for awesome items. I'm going to start modifying my items. So we think that like sort of represents a pretty substantial change to how you play the game.
Oh,
So
yeah,
for
absolutely.
us wondering why we kind of built it around the pit, you know, and why we associated difficulty with the pit. How do y'all think about that?
เดฟถามกันเองว่าถ้ามีคำถามว่าทำไมเอาระดับความยากของเกมมาผูกไว้กับระดับพิษ
And I think that this overhaul is effectively turning the pit into the game's backbone to use kind of a gruesome
developer อี
term,
กท่านหนึ่ง
you know,
ตอบว่า
so
การ
whatever.
ทำแบบนี้มันทำให้พิษกลายไปเป็นระบบ
It's basically
กระดูก
turning the
สัน
pit
หลัง
into
ของ
game's
เกม เป็น
backbone,
ระบบ
like
ที่บอกว่าความยากของเกม
and
มันอยู่ที่
all
ระดับ
other
เท่าไหร่
difficulties
เอามาผูก
kind of
เป็นระบบ
derive
หลัก
from
ของ
that.
เกมไปเลย
And it gives us a very predictable and understandable pace.
แล้วก็
to
จะทำให้ผู้เล่นกับ
experience all other
developer
activities
เข้าใจ
that
ถึงเพสของความ
based on
ยากของคอนเทนต์ง่ายขึ้น
Yeah, that razor is
เห็นชัดขึ้นว่า
great
โอ
for
เคพิช
pushing
ชั้น
difficulty, right?
70 ยาก
Think
ประมาณ
about
ไหน
how,
ถ้า
part
ใคร
of
นึกไม่ออก
what's
พิช
really
ชั้น
fun about
21 ยาก
Diablo
ประ
is
มาณ
that
เวอร์เทีย
feeling of
3 ก็แปลว่า
progression
ไม่ยาก
of
ถูกปะ
becoming powerful, then taking on a big ass demon, killing it, getting awesome loot. And what the pit is going to do is you're going to push that difficulty, then unlock new torment tiers, which is going to unlock more efficiency for you. And
Right.
you can sort of think about it as like we've added not just a world tier 5, but a world tier 5 and 6 as part of this torment system. And it's something we can continue to sort of evaluate and build on as characters become more powerful and we add new ways to sort of play through the system.
Yeah, and I think it's also a lot about consistency across content, right? Currently in the live game, we've got a lot of different, levels of different types of things, right? You've got Nightmare Dungeon keys, you've got pit levels, you've got Infernal Horde tiers. And we just kind of realized that, hey, the pit is something that we have, really good delineation between the different levels. So you've got a wide spread of different tiers for that. And that's something we can kind of peg difficulty against across the whole game to make a more consistent experience. When you're in a certain difficulty tier, you're just going to get a more consistent experience across all activities.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like when you're on Torment 2, you're going to know that all content you're facing is on the level of Torment 2. But right now on the live game, you go into a pit tier 50,
ว่าตอนนี้
you're
มัน
like,
ง
okay,
ง
it's pit tier 50 difficulty.
พิช
And
เทีย
then you go into a
50
Nightmare Dungeon
Nightmare
tier 50,
tier
and it's
100
a totally different difficulty.
ไม่เข้า
And
ใจ
then you
ว่า
go
เปรี
into
ยบเทียบ
Infernal
กัน
Horde tier 8,
อย่าง
and you're
ไร
like, wait a minute, this is
พิช
extremely
เทีย
hard compared to these
50
other
มัน
ones.
ยาก
They're
เท่า
just
กับ
not
Nightmare
set
tier
up
เท่าไหร่
right. And so we
มัน
want
คื
to
อ
create a
บอ
more
ส
level
end
playing
game
field so that difficulty is easier to
ไหม
understand.
ลงพิชเทียเท่าไหร่ถึงจะ
There's
สู้
also
บอส
It's like a
about
Torment ได้
and shared experience for everyone.
developer อยากทำให้ระบบตรงนี้ชัดเจนขึ้น
Yeah, that's definitely a benefit, and it's also, in some sense, leveling up all the activities. Like, I know that there's some people who really enjoy whispers, for example, and whispers just falls off. Like, if you're doing the pit and you're level 100, you're level 90 in the pit, like whispers are terrible, right? Like, you're not actually going to run whispers.
บอกว่าปัญหาตอนนี้คือคอนเทนต์
pushing
หลาย
deep
ๆคอนเทน
into
ต์
the
ใน
game.
เกม มัน
But
ไม่มี
now
ความ
when
หมายเมื่อ
sort of
ตัวละค
things
ร
are
เล่น
leveling
ผ่าน
up
ไป
and
ช่วง
you
ห
have
นึ่ง
torment
ไม่ว่า
tiers,
จะ
you
เป็น
have a
เคว
place
ส
to
ต้น
go and
ไม้
sort of use the efficiency from those different
PVP
activities
Hell
if you like
Tower
that.
Boss Nightmare
Yeah, and this
Yep.
this kind of carries over to other activities, not just whispers. It's like your hell tides.
Yeah,
to
the whole
Infernal
world is
Hordes.
leveling, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's
ระบบใหม่นี้จะทำให้ทั้งโลก ที่เราอยู่ในแต่ละเทียร์ยากขึ้นตามไปด้วย หมายความว่าวิ่งออกไปนอกเมืองมอนสเตอร์ก็จะเก่ง เหมือนเวลาลงพิษแค่เป็นคนละระบบกัน
the rest of the content.
Yep.
เปรียบเทียบ
Alright.
ความยาก
So let's talk a little more about the details of difficulty tiers. So on the right-hand side here, you can see this table. It's basically showing off the associated pit tier with any given difficulty tier. So normal simply starts on 1,
นะ
and then like we
อัน
saw
นี้ระบบความ
before,
ยาก
it
ต
goes up
่าง
by
ๆ ที่มี
5 each
normal
time.
hard
Torment
expert
tiers,
penitent แล้วก็
at which
torment
point it
4
goes up by 15 each time.
พิษทั้งหมดจะ
Torment 4
maximum
lands
ที่
on
ชั้น 100
65.
คอนเทนต์อื่นๆ ทั้งหมด
Torment
จะ
1
ผูก
starts
กับ
on
ความ
20.
ยากของพิษ
And in light of this, we have changed the highest pit tier to be 100, down from 200. And this doesn't mean that the pit tier 100 is going to be the same difficulty as it is on live. It's going to be harder. So each pit tier you're going up is going to be harder than it was before, effectively. And we also have this pretty neat new system where we have smart keys.
ระบบ smart key
And what that means
คอนเทนต์ทุก
is
อย่างส
your
เกล
things
ตาม
like
พิษ
Infernal Hordes or Nightmare
ไม่ว่าจะเป็น
Dungeons.
Infernal Horde
The keys
Nightmare
to enter
Dungeon
those
คีย์ที่
activities
มันห
are
ล่น
now
มา
going to follow the current difficulty tier that you're on. So if I have an
จะขึ้นอยู่
Infernal
กับว่า
Horde
เราอยู่
key
ใน
and I'm
difficulty
on
ที่อะไร
Torment 3 and I use it, I'm going to go into a Torment 3 difficulty Infernal Horde. And the same is true for Nightmare Dungeons.
เพราะฉะนั้นหมายความว่า
So we're pretty excited about that change.
พิษ
because
เรา
again,
ดัน
you
ไป
don't
เล
have
เว
to
ลเท่าไหร่
worry back
ลง
all these
Infernal Horde ก็
different
ความยาก
paths
แบบเดียวกัน
backward.
แค่เป็นอีกคอน
Just
เทนต์
kind
ห
of
นึ่ง
makes things easier. Just makes life easier.
ไม่ต้องมาแปลงผลเอาเอง
Yeah,
ว่า
it's a big quality of life change.
เราเลเวลเท่านี้ลงพิชชั้นเท่านี้
On live right
ล
now,
ง
you
ห
get
อ
a
ด
bunch of
เวฟไหน
sacred
ถึงจะคุ้ม
you
ล
know
ง
nightmare
Nightmare
dungeon
Dungeon
keys,
ชั้นไหน
but I'm sure everyone runs a ton of world tier
Smart
3
Key จะ
nightmare
เป็นตัว
dungeons
คำนวณ
where
ให้เราเอง
you definitely don't just pop in to get a sacred weapon. But what I'm getting at is a lot of those keys just end up getting salvaged. And now when all keys can sort of carry weight through various torment tiers, getting a nightmare key is this interesting choice of like, well, do I keep it or do I run it now? Because if I keep it, I can just use it at a later time. And it's really about giving the players that choice on when do they want to run this content. We're not just going to invalidate that key.
กุญแจ
It's a
Nightmare
valid
ที่ได้มา
torment tier. You
เว
need
ลา
to
เป็น
pick
ระ
the
ดับ
key
ต่ำ
that
มัน
use
ก็
it.
จะไม่มี
So
อีกต่อไป
I
ละ
think it's
มันก็จะเป็น
definitely
ระดับ
key
ที่ผูก
management
กับ
a lot
พิษของ
easier
เรา
and more fluid as well. And one thing on the pit, Aislinn, that I think is really interesting is we definitely have rescaled the pit. Tier 100 is sort of like our 200 on live, but I think that's something that you know we definitely want to keep an eye out on PTR. We don't have any problems with increasing the amount of pit tiers. Like this is something we can definitely revisit if we see in PTR that you all are insane, which is probably going to happen, and you beat tier 100. We really like that it's a razor and measuring stick, and we don't want to take that away from players. So that's something that we want to get PTR feedback, and we could really use your help.
และแน่นอนใน
breaking that
PTR ก็จะ
system
เป็น
and
ตัว
seeing
บอก
how
ว่า
far
พิษ
you
จะ
can
มี
push it.
100 ชั้นต่อไปหรือว่า
Oh yeah, that's a
จะ
great
เพิ่ม
point.
จะ
And
ลด
you know, like we've said on this stream, there are going to be a lot of new player power opportunities coming, and so yeah, please show us what you got, as they say.
ระบบ แบ่ง
Okay,
แยกความ
so let's
ยาก
talk about
คอนเทนต์ในเกมจะอยู่
let's just dive a little more into the details. I think we went over a lot of
ใน
this stuff
ระบบความ
already.
ยากเทียร์ใหม่ทั้ง
But
8 เทียร์
we'll
ที่
kind
มี
of go through this slide here.
สแตนดาร์ดทั้ง 4 ระบบ ทอร์เมนต์
So
4 เทียร์
yeah, all content in the game exists within an expanded difficulty tier selection, like we were talking about. I think an important thing to call out here is that, for example, Penitent is, if you're comparing it just to like kind of understand what it's going to look like relative to live right now, Penitent's kind of going to end up being like World Tier 2 if you added 45 monster
ขอบคุณคุณ
levels on
Stone
top.
30 ครับ ที่สมัครเป็น
And
ฮอล
that's
ลาดีม คน
intended
ที่
to kind of be the upper echelon of
172,000
like pre-max level
และนั่นคือตัวเลขจริง
character leveling. So if you really want to amp up the difficulty to as hard as you can make it, like going on to Penitent is where you want to be.
แน่นอนว่าเรา
And
เลื
this
อก
is just
ระดั
a
บความยาก
lovely
4 ระดับนี้ได้
little
ตั้งแต่เริ่ม
visual aid.
เล่
We've
น
got some
เกม
cool
เล
new
ย
icons for these difficulty
World Tier ใหม่ทั้ง
tiers.
4 เทียร์ในระบบ normal
Normal,
นี่คือสั
hard,
ญลักษณ์
expert, and penitent. It gets harder as you keep going. Okay, so yeah, and we really want this to be like opt-in, not progression locked. And so the vanilla Diablo 4 difficulty tiers kind of operated as progression tiers, right?
ระบบใหม่
But
opt
being
in
five
ไม่ใช่
progression
progression lock ห
tiers
มายความว่าอะไร
is the moment you get
progression
to
lock
World Tier 3, as
มัน
Colin
ก็
was
จะเหมือน
saying,
ระบบ
like you
ที่
unlock
เราจะ
sacred
สอบ
items, maybe you go into a dungeon, so
World
you
Tier
can
2
find
ไป
a
World Tier
sacred
3 แล้ว
weapon.
ก็ปลดล็อกข
And
อง
these things unlock
อัน
so
นี้
quickly and they drop so
เรา
frequently
สามารถ
that
เลื
you
อก
kind of just
ความ
have
ยาก
this huge
และ
burst
เข้า
of
ไปเล่น
power.
ได้เลย
And you
เล่น
never
แล้ว
really
ไม่
got
ไหว
to feel that power.
ย้ายได้
And we want to make sure that you are like feeling each upgrade you get in the game and it feels really, really punchy. And we really want these new difficulty tiers to be player guided. Like we want you to be able to make your own decisions on when you're moving on to the next one and what's the right pace for you. And of course, these new difficulty tiers are going to give you improving
แน่นอนว่าระดับ
rewards,
ความยากที่
find
สูง
more
ขึ้น ก็จะทำให้
gold,
โก
more
ลดรอปเยอะ
experience,
ขึ้น
and you're going to
EXP
have
ได้
more
เยอะขึ้น
efficiency per difficulty
หลุด
tier.
โดยรวมก็
So
จะ
the
ดู
higher
ดีขึ้น
difficulty tier you can fight the game on, the more efficient your experience is going to be effectively.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
that's
so
really
go ahead, Charles.
Good go. Yeah, I was just saying that's really like what I view as the differentiating factor between what current D4 is and in the new patch 2.0 is if you enter Torment 1, you can find the best item in Torment 1. You could complete your character and get full best in slot and everything. It's just gonna take a while, right? It's gonna be less efficient. You're gonna be getting less loot. And whereas in the live game right now, right, you just can't find the best things in World Tier 3. You are kind of obligated to go to that World Tier 4.
ไม่ว่าจะอยู่ World Tier อะไร
And
ก็มีโอกาส
now,
ไฟล์ของ
if you're
หา
able to
ของ
clear
ที่
higher
ดีๆได้ แต่
torments
มัน
with
ยากกว่าระดับ
efficiency,
ที่สูง
that's
กว่า
just
แน่น
going
อน
to be the best option for you to find the gear more efficiently, but you aren't forced into Torment 4 to find the best items in the game.
Yeah, that's something I've really liked about it is that we get to start the end game a lot earlier with Torment, right? Because there's nothing that you're excluded from. There's no awesome piece of loot that you can't find by Torment 1, and so you get to really start to test your build after it's kind of gotten some real optimization, I think much earlier into the journey than before.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Jeevan. And like a great example of that is what we're doing with the ladder bosses or the lair bosses. All of those unlock in Torment 1. The cost to summon them is
บอส end game ทุกตัว
the same throughout all the Torment tiers.
ใช้ currency เดิมในการปลดล็อก
What that means is
เริ่มต้น
if you
สู้
can
ได้
beat
ที่
it on a
Torment
higher
1
Torment tier, you're going to get way more uniques. So you get a handful
แต่
of
ถ้าเรา
uniques
สู้
starting
บอ
in
สพวกนี้ใน
Torment
ทอร์เมน
1,
ต์ที่สูงขึ้น
way more uniques in
จำนวน
Torment
ชิ้นยูนิค ก็จะได้เยอะ
4,
มาก
but
ขึ้น
the cost, because it remains static, we're not going to ask you to get anything
และ
extra
จำนวน
because
ของ
of
ที่ใช้ใน
unique.
การ
So
ซัมมอน
that
มี
just
เท่าเดิม
means as long as you can kill that Torment 4 boss, you're getting way more efficiency out of that boss. I mean, it really is like this.
ยิ่งเรา
Feels
เก่งขึ้น
amazing to sort
ของ
of
ก็ยิ่ง
progress
ดรอป
through
ดี
those
ขึ้น
Torment tiers and just unlock way more power opportunity.
อันนี้คือสัญลักษณ์ของ Torment
Yeah,
ทั้ง
we don't
4
really have this differentiation of
เหมือน
like
กัน
a
แค่มี
regular
เลข
version
1
of
2
Blade
3
Debuff, like a
4
regular version of Duriel,
แต่
and
not
then a
final
tormented echo of Duriel. That's not really a distinction that we have anymore. Whereas like previously it would cost more materials to summon the tormented version.
จำได้ถ้าเรา
It
เล่น
would give more
สู้กับ
reward.
บอส Torment
Now it's the
ตั้งแต่
same
ซีซั่น
cost across the
3
different
ซีซั่น
torment tiers.
5
It's just if you're able to conquer him
ใช้
on
ของ
Torment
เยอะขึ้น
4,
ของดรอป
that's
มา
where
ก
you're
ขึ้น
gonna get the
ต่อไปไม่มี
absolute
ละ
most
ใช้
bang
ของ
for
เท่า
your
เดิม
buck in
บอส
terms
เก่ง
of
ขึ้นสู้ได้ก็เอาของ
resources
ไป
in to loot out.
Yeah. And I want to just double down on like Torment 1 is where the end game starts now. And just each torment tier that you're ascending is making your end game, more fun, basically. Because you're going to be getting cooler stuff or more frequently.
ระบบไอเทม
Okay, so enough about difficulty tiers. Let's move on to some itemization changes.
ไอเทม power shuffle
So, item strength. We have what I like to call the item power shuffle happening in patch 2.0. Items with item power above 540 are going to be adjusted to 540. And affix
ไอเทม
bands
power สูง
in
สุด
lieu
จะ
of
ลดลง
this,
มาอยู่
or
ที่
in addition to this
750
rather, are going to be adjusted as well. So yeah, items at the new character level max they're gonna max out at 750. And that's not actually the highest item power that's going to be in the game, and we'll talk about that more in just a second.
แต่ 750
But most items
ไม่ใช่
you'll be finding
max
once you hit max character level will be
แต่ไอเทม
item
ส่วน
power
มากจะเป็น
750.
750
And
แต่มีไอเทมที่ทรงพลังกว่านั้น
you're going to be finding much better item power items from levels 51 to 59. There's
ใน
going to
ช่วง
be
ก่อน
big
เลด
item
เกม
power
ช่วงเลเวล
jumps.
51 ถึง
So once you
59 จะ
start
เจอ
leveling
จัม
your
ของพลัง
character
ไอเทม
past
สูง
those
มาก
original 50 character levels,
ๆพร้อมเป็น
you're
ช่วง
gonna
เลเวล
start finding a
ท้าย
lot better gear.
ๆอ s ัววาร์ดไอเทม power
Okay,
800 สูง
so
กว่า
let's
ที่
take a
บอก
look
ไว้เมื่อกี้
at what an ancestral item looks like in patch 2.0. Oh,
Sacred item ไม่มีอีกต่อไป มีแต่ ancestral
oh, could we? Yeah, let's take a look here real quick. So you'll notice here that this item has 800 item power, which is 50 higher than the max 750.
สูงกว่า
that
ไอ
I was
เทม
talking
ทั่ว
about
ไปที่
before.
750
You'll also notice on the right-hand side that is the torment icon. So
มี torment
ancestral
icon โชว์อยู่ด้วย
items can be found starting on torment 1. They're going to become more frequent as you ascend torment difficulties.
ยิ่ง
but they're
อยู่
still
ใน
going
ระ
to
ดับ
stay
torment
pretty
ที่สูง
rare
ขึ้นก็จะเจอ
throughout
ไอเทม
all
ancestral
torment
มากขึ้น
levels. You'll also notice that the greater affix on this item is
Greater
highlighted.
affix
That is because now
highlight
whenever you find an ancestral item, they're always going to have
คุณ
one
พบอะไร
rare
พอดีครับ
affix. They can roll with more, but they will be
ต่อไปนี้
guaranteed
ไอเทม
one
ancestral
every
การันตี
single
1
time.
ดาว อย่างน้อย
So let's dive in more into the
Right about
details.
that, right? Aislinn is part of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
finding a greater affix on live right now is sometimes it's on life per second. It's like, oh, okay. Got a greater affix on life per second. But now when you see an ancestral item, it's always going to have a greater affix. And that ancestral eye power bump, the affix bump is going to feel really good. Even if you miss that affix, it's still a huge upgrade to your character if you haven't.
ต่อไปนี้ขอแค่ไอเทมหล่นลงมาเป็น ancestral
Yeah,
ก็มี
and
ลุ้น
sometimes, right,
ต
you
ลอด
get
เพราะมีดาวการั
an
นตี
item that has multiple greater affixes on live, and it's not at 925. It's not at the highest item power, and that's kind of a mixed bag, right? Like, well, it's kind of good, but it's a lower item power. And now things with greater affixes will be definitionally at that highest item power.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk about the details
ก็คือ
here.
ไอเทม power ที่สูงที่สุด
So
ต่อไป
sacred
นี้จะเป็น
items are not
800
going to drop anymore.
ไม่มี
They
sacred
will be
item อีกต่อ
put.
ไปแล้ว
You're gonna be looking at normal items pre-torments, and then you're gonna be chasing ancestral items once you are in torment tiers. So yeah, starting in Tournament 1, they're going to start to drop. As I said, they're going to become more common as you go up, but again, they're going to stay
คุณนนท์
fairly
สวัสดีครับ
rare. They're never going to, be like the only thing that's dropping. Ancestral items are intended to be where you're finding forever items. So when you find like a really good ancestral weapon or, of whatever slot that you may not have an ancestral item for, that's going to be a big moment. That's going to be an exciting moment where you're going to get something a lot better. Because they also have their own affix band as well. So these ancestral items are going to have better affixes than their non-ancestral counterparts too. Something to note is that greater affixes only drop on ancestral items. You're not going to be finding greater affixes on non-ancestrals. So when you see a
ไอ
greater
เทมธรรมดา
affix
ไม่มีโอ
drop
กาส
on the
ออกมอด
ground,
ติดดาว
you're
อีก
going
ต่อ
to
ไป
know
แล้ว
that that is an ancestral item.
ติดดาว
Ancestral
ancestral
items
ไอเทม
also
power
have
800 แน่น
2
อน
tempering slots up from 1 on non-ancestrals, and they're masterworkable up to 12, whereas non-ancestrals are masterworkable up to 4.
ต่อไปนี้ของ
Finally, they are going
ancestral
to have higher
temper ได้
aspect
2 ครั้ง
ranks
ของ
too.
ไม่
So
ancestral
you're
ได้
going to
1
find legendary
ของ
aspects
ancestral ตีบวก
that
ได้
become
12 ของไม่
better on
ancestral บวกได้
ancestral
4
items.
aspect ก็โล
Charles,
สู
we
งขึ้นด้วย
actually added a ton of power to legendary aspects to accommodate this. We didn't just sort of readjust where those power bands are coming from.
Yeah, all of the legendary aspects that now scale a little bit further into the ancestral tier. We basically just tacked on 5 new levels kind of on
อูเบอร์
top
แค่
of
ดรอปไป
the
ดันได้
current
ตอบได้
value.
แล้ว
So
ครับ
you're just going to find even more powerful legendary effects than you have currently in the new ancestral tier.
It's going to be
เพราะ
a
ฉะ
lot
นั้น
of fun to
ของ
find
ไอ
those.
เทมที่เป็นไอเทม legendary aspect ก็โลสูงกว่าไอเทม
Okay.
ทั่วไปด้วย Paragon อัปเด
Let's
ต
move on to Paragon.
Paragon อัปเดต
So we have some pretty
แรง
big
ของ
glyph
Glyph
updates coming with patch 2.0.
จาก 21 เลเวลเพิ่มเป็น
There's
100 เล
been
เว
a
ลเดี๋ยวก่อน
significant rework to how many ranks you can earn on any given glyph from 21 to 100, which is a lot of new ranks. But we want to make sure that there's still texture in that system, right? And so because of that, we also have a new a new glyph rarity, legendary.
Gift Rarity
So
ใหม่
once you upgrade a glyph to rank 46,
พอ Gift
it becomes
Level
a
เป็น
legendary
46 มันจะ
glyph.
กลายเป็น
You can
Gift
see here on the
Legendary อั
right,
ตโนมัติ
this spirit glyph is level 50, so it's past that 46 mark. It's legendary. You're going to get a glyph radius increase at rank 15, which is
ข
already
ยาย
in
แร
the
ง
live
ที่
game. But you're also going to get another radius
Tier 15
increase at rank 46.
แล้ว
when
ก็
it becomes
40 แล้วก็
legendary.
46 ก็
This
ข
is
ยายไปเป็น
making them
5
bigger than they could have
radius
been previously. So you're going to get more
ฟาร์ม
space
เม็ดละ
radius
เม็ดละ
with
2 วัน
this. And when a glyph becomes legendary, it also unlocks a significant bonus,
แต่
more
เดี๋ยว
so
ก่อน
than it did before. And you can see that on the bottom of this glyph here. It's got the
Legendary
legendary
bonus เพิ่ม crit
strike
damage
damage by 21.6%.
หยุดทุกคนอย่าพึ่ง
And it's very important
ต่อ
to note
ไป
that
นี้
this is a
Glyph
multiplicative
ไม่
bonus.
ได้
This
ฟาร์มใน Nightmare Dungeon แล้ว
is not an additive bonus.
Glyph ฟาร์มใน
You're
พิษ
going to be getting a lot of power from that bonus there. Something else I want to bring up is that glyphs are moving to the pit. So you're going to be upgrading your glyphs in the pit. You're no longer going to be upgrading them in Nightmare Dungeons. And it's going to be an attempt-based system. So when you finish a pit run, you're going to go to the end, and you're going to be able to have some chances to level up your glyph and increase their ranks. And if you are in a pit that is 10 tiers higher than your current glyph, you're going to have guaranteed success. And for every 20 pit tiers that that the pit level you're in is higher than your current glyph that you're trying to upgrade, you're going to get bonus ranks so that you can accelerate the process. Do you want to speak
ยิ่ง
more to
ล
that,
ง
Colin?
พิษชั้นสูงกว่า
Yeah, I think
เทีย
that's
ร์ของ
really
กลิฟเท่าไหร่
important
ก็
because
ยิ่ง
you
มี
can
โอ
easily
กาส
look
อั
at
ปเกรด
the
สูง
rank
มาก
100 and be like, oh my god, the grind is even longer. But based on how that upgrade chance works, it's guaranteed as long as you're beating pit tiers that are higher than your glyph. And then how that bonus math ends up playing out is if you're beating, for example, a pit
ตัว
tier
อย่าง
30,
ลงพิษเทียร์
that's roughly somewhere between today's world tier 3 and 4. You can upgrade a glyph from 1 to
ความ
15
ยากประมาณ
in 3
World
runs.
Tier
So
3
you
ถึง
think about the difference between today's game and patch 2.0, you're getting those glyphs leveled way faster. If
4 กิฟ
you're
เล
pushing
เวล
that
เร็วขึ้น
difficulty.
เยอะมาก
What we really wanted to do here was we've heard a ton of feedback around how the XP system for Nightmare Dungeons feels really grindy. It also just doesn't serve the Nightmare Dungeons very well, right? It's like, how do I get to the end as fast as possible, but nothing in the dungeon matters, right? And that what that
เขาบอก
does
ว่าคอน
is
เทนต์ของ
the
Nightmare
pit is
Dungeon
all
มันไม่
about
เหมาะ
speed and
กับกลิฟ
efficiency.
ตั้งแต่
We
แร
sort
ก
of
แล้ว
embrace
เพราะเวลา
this
ฟาร์ม
fact.
กลิฟเราไม่สนใจ
We think that
มอนสเตอร์ในแมป
that's
เรา
just
แค่อยาก
really
จ
going
บ
to
ให้เร็วที่สุด
accelerate your pit
มัน
cliff
ตรงกับคอนเซปต์ของพิษพอดี ที่ยังไงก็อยากจบให้เร็วที่สุด
sort of
ฆ่ามอนสเตอร์เท่าที่ต้องฆ่า
the chance based system is
เดี๋ยวต้องดูว่าเอา
essentially
Nightmare ไว้ฟาร์ม
there
อะไร
because it felt really bad when it was binary. Like when we said, hey, you need to beat the pit tier, or you need to beat
เหมือน
the
กัน
pit
ครับ
that's
เหมือน
10
ลง
levels higher than
Greater
the
Rift
cliff. And if you
up
don't get
Legendary
that,
Gem
that just felt really bad. So the chance is not there to increase the grind or slow down progression. It's actually just there to protect from like it feeling just terrible to not get literally anything from that run. So again, to be clear, it's 100% chance as long as you're pushing difficulty. We think that this fits the content a lot better. We've heard a ton of feedback around like the pit rewards feeling lackluster, and there's not really a reason to push difficulty. You know, you sort of just want to hone in on like 90 or 101, depending on where you're at in terms of your progression journey on live. This system really encourages you to push and gives you a tangible reward every single time you do it.
Yeah, and I think it's important that there's the consistency of like the
คำเตือน
communication between, right?
กลิฟ
So,
เรา
hey,
อาจ
my
จะเวลไม่
glyphs
เต็ม
are currently level 50. Well, what kind of pit tier should I be approaching to upgrade these? Well, somewhere in the range of 50 to 60, right? You know, just a little bit higher so that you can keep pushing that harder content.
น่าสนใจ
And
มาก
also, if you have a glyph down at level 1, because maybe you haven't paid attention to that glyph, it's going to
ผมขอปิดเสียงเดฟเลยนะ สิ่งที่เกิดขึ้นคือ หมายความว่าถ้าตัวละครคุณไม่เก่งพอที่จะลงพิษชั้น 90 ชั้น 100 กลิฟในพารากอนคุณก็อาจจะเลเวลไม่ถึง 100 เพราะว่าโอกาสการันตีที่จะเลเวลอัพคือคุณต้องลงพิษที่สูงกว่าเลเวลกลิฟ10เลเวลให้ผ่าน หมายความว่าถ้าตัวละครคุณมีกลิฟเลเวล70ลงพิษเลเวล60โอกาสไม่การันตีคุณอาจจะต้องลงเป็น10รอบเพราะฉะนั้นมันเป็น power spike ของตัวละครเก่งขึ้นจริง
So you can see that it's showing you the
แต่เราอาจจะไม่มีกลิฟเลเวลเต็มใช้แล้ว
success chance to get a rank up. And something else I want to call out is that when you are oh yes right so this is rank 45 to 46 explicitly which is the moment
นะ
where
เห็น
you
คลิป
are
นะเลเวล
increasing from
46
rare to legendary. And something important to note about that is that it does cost a fairly significant amount of gem fragments as well, but it's giving you that increased radius size and the new multiplicative legendary bonus, which is pretty sick.
เห็นไหมมันมีโอกาสสำเร็จ 55% หมายความว่าถ้าเราลงคอนเทนต์ไม่ยากพอ ถ้าเราลงไม่ยากพอ เราอาจจะไม่ได้เลเวลกลิฟเลย แรกๆใช่แรกๆชิวๆแรกๆบุ๊บบุ๊บบุ๊บบุ๊บบุ๊บบุ๊บบุ๊บพอมาถึงกลิฟเลเวล40-50ลงไม่ผ่านลงผ่านตีบวกไม่ขึ้นลงผ่านตีบวกไม่ขึ้นเพราะฉะนั้นมันจะเป็นคอนเทนต์ที่ grindy สุดๆแล้วมันจะทำให้ power spike ของเราไปได้ไม่สุดถ้าตัวละครเราไม่เก่งพอ
Let's talk about some
ดี
more
หรือไม่ดี
stuff
อันนี้เดี๋ยว
related
เรา
to
ค่อยว่ากัน
Paragon. We have realm partitioning for Paragon now, and this is kind of getting into alting that Colin was talking about. We have realm-based Paragon points now, so your Paragon points are going to be
แล้ว
shared
แต่คนมอง
across
คุณ
an
เรน
entire
แล้วแต่
realm.
คนมอง
And remember that what a realm is like either seasonal softcore or seasonal hardcore or the same for each
พารากอน
realm.
แชร์
Those
ทุก
are
ตัวละคร
realms.
ในทุกเรียม
And these Paragon points are going to stay
อาจจะได้ผม
latent
จะได้เห็น
on a
ผมเล่นฮาร์ดคอร์แล้ว
level 60 character. And what that means is that, you know, if you have, let's say, 150 Paragon points on a realm, those Paragon points will remain inactive on any character that's pre-level 60. But once you hit level 60 on that character, they will have those 150 Paragon points. And it's also important to note that any Paragon points you earn on any of your characters in that realm are going to be shared among all characters in that realm. So if you earn 25 or 50 Paragon points on one character and then hop over to your alt,
ไม่ชอบการอัพเลเวลที่พึ่ง RNG ถ้าเราไม่ชอบ RNG เราต้องเก่งครับ ถ้าเรา casual เราต้องใช้ RNG ถ้าเราเก่ง build เราเทพ
So right now the current max
ลงทุกครั้ง give level ขึ้นทุกครั้ง
bonuses is 200 and we're increasing that up to 300, which is going to give you a lot more levels to chase throughout any given season.
พารากอนเพิ่มขึ้น100 แต้ม
Okay, and in light of these changes coming to Paragon,
เขาบอกสถานการณ์พารากอนปัจจุบันเป็นแบบนี้
the way that boards work as well.
วิธีการเดินพารากอนปัจจุบันคือเดินปลดล็อกช่องกิฟต์ให้เยอะที่สุดเท่าที่เป็นไปได้จริง
you know, we're looking to set a maximum for the number of Paragon boards that you can equip at any given time. And this is also because, you know, on live right now, the best strategy is to aim for
ต้องเล่นตามใจไม่ได้ไม่หรอกครับ
you just go off
คือ
you oftentimes ignore
ต้องเข้าใจว่าอย่างงี้
whatever legendary node bonus you're getting just for the glyph slot and we
เดิมกลิปมันเวล21ตอนนี้ตัวละครเราเก่งขึ้นเพราะกลิปมันเพิ่มเป็นเวล100แล้วมันสเกลเหมือนเดิมแถมมีพลังแถมเพิ่มเข้ามาให้ด้วยแต่แปลว่าถ้าเราเล่นไม่เยอะพอเราแคชชวลเราจะไปไม่ถึงจุดที่มันสุดยอดของตัวละครนึกออกไหมมันทำให้เกมเหมาะกับผู้เล่นแคชชวลน้อยลงทำให้ผู้เล่นที่กรายที่อยากใช้เวลานานๆเล่นได้นานขึ้นผมให้มองอย่างนี้แล้วกันเพราะฉะนั้นสำหรับคนที่เล่นแคชชวลก็อาจจะรู้สึกว่าโอบิลเรายังเก่งได้อีกมันยังไปได้อีกมันยังไม่สุดมันอาจจะทำให้เขาอยากเล่นมากขึ้นหรืออาจจะทำให้เขาแบบพอละแค่นี้พอละมันก็จะไปถึงไม่สุดแต่คนที่แบบเล่นจริงจังกว่านั้นมันจะมีอะไรให้ฟาร์มมากกว่าแค่คอร์นี่หรอปะกริปมันจะมาเป็นตัวชี้วัดว่าโอเคกริปคุณเวล80คุณไม่มีทางเก่งเท่าคนที่กริปเวล100
once you've achieved all those different things, you don't feel so bad necessarily around not getting to that Paragon level 300. At a certain point, you start to really just really need to
ใช่ครับกริปเพิ่มเป็นเลเวล
those extra Paragon points are going to start providing you more of a show of
ปิดเซิร์ฟเหรอครับ
badass you are
ไม่แน่ใจเหมือนกัน
and give you incremental progress that's a little bit less demanding that you must grind through all of this content to unlock every
ตัวละครเราเก่งขึ้นแน่นอนอย่างที่คุณอนุรักษ์บอกเลยครับแกตัวละครเราเก่งขึ้น
Yeah, and something I'm pretty excited about this is that, you know,
ใช่ครับเล่นเยอะเล่นนาน บิลโอเคตัวละครเราก็จะเก่งขึ้นยิ่งฟาร์มเยอะเราก็ยิ่งเก่งขึ้น
I think this change really lets me kind of explore the boards and think about what specific route optimizations I want to take and
เพิ่มแคปเพิ่มเวลาที่เราเล่นได้
I'm a pretty big fan of it.
Well, I know we have we just went through a ton of content right here with all the changes that are coming for progression to Paragon to itemization.
สายไหนใช้กลิปแบบอันอ้วกแตกแต้มพารากอนเพิ่มขึ้น100แต้มเพราะฉะนั้นน่าจะแทบทุกสายที่ใช้8กลิปอย่างน้อยคิดว่า
so that they can actually get a understanding in their own
เดิมมี200ตอนนี้มี300เพิ่มขึ้น 50% ปกติเดี๋ยวนี้เขาใช้7กลิปผมว่าเราอาจจะได้เห็น10กลิป
I know Colin we're seeing a lot in chat of like you know people are
รอบไม่นอนเป็นอาทิตย์
this feels a little D3ish in ways I don't know if you wanted to chat or like comment on that a little bit more
มีคนบอกว่ามันเหมือน D3 เลยตอนนี้
happy to it's definitely familiar right
ใช่มันเหมือน D3 เดฟบอก
We thought a lot about like what is the right way to address the player feedback of we've gotten a bunch
เก่งขึ้นแค่ด้านพลังโจมตีพลังป้องกันไม่ครับมันเป็นสแตทโบนัสนะ critical vulnerable โบนัสสแตทโบนัสเลือดนู่นนี่นั่นอันนี้คือแค่ด้านพารากอนด้านเดียวมันปรับหลายด้านมากคุณการมันเลยเรียกว่า Diablo 4 2.0 ปรับเยอะมาก
We felt like okay well we could add a world tier 5 and add ancestral uber ancestral and increase the level cap but that would mean you would just need to grind more to get to that point where you're finding your forever items, doing item modification.
ไม่แก้ปัญหากริฟฟ้าที่ไม่มีคนใช้อาจจะไม่มีกริฟฟ้าแล้วก็ได้นะอาจจะไม่มีกริฟฟ้าแล้วก็ได้
made us reevaluate what is important and it's what's important to us is getting people into the end game. Getting people finding their forever
เขาบอกว่า
smashing monsters
ต่อไปนี้พิษจะมี100ชั้นพิษชั้น100จะยากเท่าชั้น200แต่คุณอนุรักษ์ต้องอย่าลืมว่าตอนนี้ยังไม่มีใครผ่านพิษ200เลยนะถูกป่ะเพราะฉะนั้นพิษชั้น100ก็แปลว่าเป็นไปไม่ได้พอพิษชั้น100เป็นไปไม่ได้มันก็แปลว่าเราอัพกริฟเลเวล90ขึ้นไปแทบจะไม่ได้กริฟไม่มีกริฟมีเต็ม100ก็จริงแต่ใครจะอัพเกิน90ไปเนี่ยต้องลงเป็น10รอบเพราะโอกาสตีบวกมันต่ำ
but because we have so many
ทั้งหมดนี้มาซีซั่น6หมดเลยครับ
we think that represents a pretty fun challenge of like how do I take all these pieces and really push as early as I can to get to that max level faster and one more thing
มันจะเป็นแบบ
really important to note is the
โลกในอุดมคติว่าโอเคกริปมันต้องเวล100แต่เวลาเล่นจริงๆ70-80ผมว่าเราก็แบบไม่ไหวละ
where you essentially log in
กริปเปลี่ยนไปอัพในพิษแทนครับเดี๋ยวเราต้องมาดูว่าไนท์แมร์เอาไว้ฟาร์มอะไร
enormous between Torment 1 and 2 and it creates this
ซึ่งผมมองว่ามันเข้าท่านะเหตุผลก็เป็นเพราะว่าอย่างที่เดฟบอกเลย Nightmare Dungeon เวลาเราฟาร์มกริฟเนี่ย ถามว่าเวลาเราฟาร์มจริงๆเราฆ่ามอนสเตอร์เยอะไหมไม่นะเพราะเรารีบจบเพื่อจะอัพเลเวลกลิฟใช่ไหมซึ่งมันไม่เหมาะกับคอนเทนต์ดันเจียนมันควรจะต้องฟาร์มฆ่ามอนเพื่อหาของแต่กลับกันพิษเนี่ยมันเป็นคอนเทนต์ที่เราต้องรีบจบเพราะมันไม่มีอะไรฆ่ามอนสเตอร์ของก็ไม่ดรอปเราฆ่ามอนสเตอร์เท่าที่ต้องฆ่ารีบฆ่าบอสรีบจบผมว่ามันเหมาะกับการอัพกลิฟกว่านะผมคิดว่าจุดเนี้ยเขามองถูกคำถามคือในแมดันเจียนเอาไปทำอะไร
Much appreciation the same. We're looking at what you're saying, we're thinking about it, and we're going to try to incorporate it and make the game better. And I think it's interesting I'm seeing the sort of Diablo 3 references, and it's like, from our perspective, if something really worked well in Diablo 3, that's more important to us to like do the thing that the players felt like was working for them than anything else, right? The fact that we've done it before in any form, to me, wouldn't stop us from doing the right thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
just doing it the right way.
Yeah,
I just said doing it the right way for D4. Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
This is the difficulty of doing everything remote. It feels like it's like a Zoom call, but interrupting each other. And also big shout out to Twitch chat for calling out Jeevan's cord management. I've seen that message a few times already. But so thanks, Aislinn. Thank you, Colin. I know Colin's going to be joining us more on a couple other topics, but we still have a lot to talk about in this stream. And the next thing that we do want to talk about is class changes and everything. And so Charles will be taking us through all the class changes.
เราจะมาดูเกมดีไซเนอร์ในหมวดหมู่คลาสว่าเขาจะมีอะไรมาให้เราบ้าง
So before we get into
คำถามที่สำคัญ
slides and details, I just wanted to thank Colin and Aislinn for talking about all the systemic updates that are coming, how we're going to test your character and how you're going to progress through it. But my topic is going to be a bit more about how, what are the exact abilities and skills and new legendary effects and uniques that you're gonna get to take on these awesome challenges that are set up through the difficulty tier system. And also a slight disclaimer, PTR is a very early build for whatever
สกิลใหม่ใช่ไหมถ้ามันสกิลเท่าเดิมมันก็น่าเบื่อมันก็แค่เราเก่งขึ้นมันไม่ได้แบบมีช้อยให้เลือกมากขึ้น
And so some of the exact numbers or some of the wording may slightly be changed, so definitely
ข้อมูลยังไม่ไฟนอลนะครับอาจจะเป็นแค่ตัวสกิลคร่าวๆที่มันล็อกแล้วตัว multiplier ตัวนู่นตัวนี้อาจจะยังไม่แน่นอนคำถามคือ necromancer
All right, so with that out of the way, let's start talking about some of the tempering changes that are going to come in patch 2.0. So, tempering is a system that we introduced back in Season of Loot Reborn.
เอฟเฟกต์ใหม่ที่จะเข้ามาในระบบ temper คือโอกาสที่จะทำดาเมจเบิ้ลหรือโอกาสที่จะตี2ครั้ง
make your build your own. And we've received a lot of feedback on the tempering system, and we're really committed to iterating on and making sure this system is the best it can possibly be going forward. One of the key points of feedback that we heard was around weapon tempers. So these affixes that you get to attach to your weapons, right? Your weapons are your big
temper มันไม่น่าใช้นะบางสกิล
And there was a big disparity here where some affixes that were on weapon
เคียว2ครั้งลีฟ2ครั้งระเบิดศพ
increasing your
เบิ้
player
ลดาเมจ
power,
ผมไม่ชอบ
right?
ผมชอบ
Things
ระเบิด
like
ศพ 2
double
ครั้งมากกว่า
projectiles or things of that nature, or bash cleaving, which was a multiplicative bonus, and others not so much, right? You had some other ones that were more duration or size effect, and they just were hard to compare against each other. And so going forward in patch 2.0, we've made all weapon tempering affixes multiplicative damage increases, oftentimes to very specific skills. And to accommodate this, we already have one bonus projectiles, and now we're going to have new affixes that give skills
เพื่อ
chances
ชดเชย
to
กับ
deal
โบน
damage,
สเปียร์
which
ยิง
means
2 ครั้ง
if
อันนี้
triggers the
ซิ
chance
ลเว
to
อ
deal
ร์
double
ฟัน
damage,
2
the
ครั้ง
entire skill is just going to do twice as much damage as before.
หรือ
Every
ตี
hit
เบิ้ล
of it will deal double damage. It's kind of an all or nothing kind of deal. And then the chance to hit twice is the chance for any time it deals damage, you just get an extra hit of damage. And this allows you to trigger things like lucky hit procs or anything that counts the number of times you deal damage. That's going to trigger an extra time with the hit twice. Offensive tempering affixes, these are the ones that can also go on your weapons, but can go on other spots as well. These are going to be additive damage increases. And these will often be to broader categories like bonus fire damage or bonus critical strike damage.
เป็นโบนัสเบสดาเมจ
And whereas the weapon tempers are often talking to more specific skills. And so here we can see an example with the Shadow Augment's Execution, where we had the Sever projectiles,
ลูกไม่ขึ้นพี่
chance to
ลูก
cast
ไม่ขึ้น
twice, but now we've got new ones that are
พี่
chance for Reap to
ลูกไม่ขึ้น
hit twice, so you cast Reap, and every target you hit, there's just a chance to get 2 hits.
คอร์คอนโทรลมันคือดึงดูดคู่ต่อสู้เฉยๆใช่ครับ
And
สตัน
Corpse
ฟรี
Explosion,
ส
whenever
โล
you cast Corpse Explosion, there is a chance for the entire
blah.
skill to deal double
รูป
damage
ไม่
to
ขึ้น
every
พี่
target
อัพ
that
รู
it
ปหน่อย
hits. Additionally, we've moved those size and duration affixes, which we think are really cool and really interesting ways of modifying your skills.
ข
We've
นาด
moved
ส
those
กิล
over to the
duration
utility
สกิล
category, so they're
เปลี่ย
not
นไปอยู่
directly
utility
competing
แทน
with these multiplicative damage increases. You're not going to feel bad that, oh, I'm missing out on damage just to, make my area hit a little bit larger or to have a
มัน
lot
จะ
of
ได้แบบ
duration on a buff.
แยกกันชัดเจน
There's
เนาะ
not as
มอ
much
ดอาวุธก็คือ
opportunity
เอา
to
ให้แรง
invest
อย่างเดียว
into
เลย
those size and
มอด
duration
อื่นก็ไป
affixes,
เป็นส่วน
which
เสริ
are
ม
still really cool ways to customize your
เวลา
character.
เราเทมเพอ
You
ร์
just
แต
want
ก
to
อย่างน้อยก็
increase
เอ้า
damage.
ตีแรงขึ้น
And
ผิด
finally,
สกิลก็
we
ไม่เป็น
know
ไร
that oftentimes tempering leads itself to
แล้วก็
hey, I
ต่อ
see
ไป
this
นี้
list
เทม
of
เพอร์1 สูตร
5
มีแค่
or
4
6
มอด
affixes sometimes.
เพราะฉะนั้น
We really are
มันจะได้
going to try to
แตก
limit
ยาก
the
ขึ้น
tempering recipes
บาง
to
ที
those
มี
4 affixes that could possibly roll on them.
ต้อง
Just
โร
to
ย
give
ให้
you a
ได้อัน
little
ที่
bit
อยาก
better
ได้
odds
ยาก
of
กว่าหน่อย
actually hitting the one that you care about than the one that
ยาก
you
กว่าห
want.
น่อย
And just be a little bit easier to kind of comprehend.
ส
And
ไลด์
even
หลับไปแล้ว
so, we're trying to set this limit at 4, but
หรือเขาอาจ
oftentimes
จะ
we're aiming for
ให้
just
เราดูแค่รูป
3
เดียว
of the recipe, depending on
จิน
how
ตนา
they're
การเอาที่เหลือ
grouping them together in ways that make sense. So this is an active area that we're working on, really trying to make sure that it's not quite. It's easier for you to get the right affix out of the tempering recipe by limiting that the number.
ยังไงดีบางอัน3ด้วยนะ4นี่คือสูง
All
สุด
right. Next, we've got changes to ultimate skills.
ต่อไปนี้
So
อัน
ultimate
ติ
skills
อัพ
can
เล
now
เวล
gain
ได้แล้ว
skill ranks.
โอเค
This is
ไม่มีสกิลใหม่
probably
แล้ว
pretty
ดูแล้วอย่างงี้
self-explanatory, but just like every other skill in the game,
ไม่มีส
ultimate
กิลใหม่
skills
แล้ว
can
ล่ะ
now be ranked up to
เพราะว่า
rank
มัน
5
อัพ
in
อัน
the
ติ
skill
ได้
tree. And just like every other skill, increasing the skill rank will increase the damage output of your ultimate skills, but it's also going to give you cooldown reduction on these ultimate skills as
อัพ
well.
อันติแรง
So
ขึ้น
oftentimes
คูล
other
ดาวน์
skills
ต่ำล
you
ง
just kind of get one or the other, right? Sometimes it's a cooldown reduction, sometimes it's a damage or healing increase. On ultimate skills, you're going to get kind of the best of both worlds. It's going to be increasing the damage output and reducing the cooldown. And finally, effects that do grant bonus skill ranks on this, such as
ถ้าใส่
Harlequin's Crest,
เชโค
that gives
ฮาร์เลควิน
bonus
เครส
skill ranks.
นะครับจะบวก
These
ส
are
กิล อัน
only
ติ
going
ให้
to
ต้อง
apply
อัพมาก่อน
ultimate
แล้ว
skills that you've already learned in
จ
the
บการ
skill
ความ
tree.
ฝันส
And
กิล
this
ใหม่
is to make sure that
เฮ้ย
you
นี่เพิ่ง
still
4
can
แต้ม
only
เอง
equip one ultimate skill.
เรามี
You
แต้ม
can't
เพิ่ม
like
ตั้ง
get
10 แต้ม
plus ranks to all skills and then
ใช้อัน
suddenly
ติ
have
ได้แค่ 1
access
สกิล
to 4 ultimate skills. We still don't want that. We still want you to just pick one. But you're just going to be getting, you're going to be able to really juice that ultimate
ที่
skill
ล
up.
ดเหลือ
If
แค่
you
4
really
ผมพอ
want
ได้
to
ยิน
make
ว่ามันจะมี
your
ใบ
class
ให้
rank
รีเทม
really
เพิ่ม
strong, that's going to be a
น่าจะ
powerful
ใช่
effect that you can invest more skill points into.
มันจะได้น่าซื้อขึ้น
All right, so those are some of the general
Food
updates.
fair.
Let's now talk about the new content coming for each individual class, starting
Necro.
here with our barbarian.
บูสกิล
All
ใหม่
right,
ส
so
กิลใหม่เว้ย
sometimes
ส
you're
กิลใหม่
playing as a barbarian
ส
and
กิล
you
ใหม่
experience a
ทุกคน
problem.
สกิลใหม่
Right? You are standing here, and there is an enemy
ไม
over
ตี้
there.
โทร
What to do? Well, a good barbarian is going to throw their weapon at the enemy over there to kill them at a distance. Right, so now we've got a new skill called Mighty Throw. It's going to hurl your weapon at an enemy. It's going to deal damage on impact, and then it's going to stick in the ground and do some pulses of damage over time.
โยนปึ้ง
So even if the initial impact doesn't kill them, there's going to be some extra pulses there. Additionally, we've got some upgrades for it, just like our other skills. Enhanced Mighty Throw is going to increase your attack speed while the weapon is out, and then you can either opt into Fighter's Mighty Throw, which is going to give bonuses to that pulsing damage. It causes your weapon swaps to
แต่มันเป็น
pulse
weapon
more
mastery มัน
into
ไม่ใช่
the
core
barrier. Or you can opt into Warrior's Mighty Throw, which is going to dramatically increase the initial impact damage
เดดโบแบบโยน
of enemies on impact. Let's take a video clip of
ขอ
this
ดู
in action.
ไมตี้โทรไมตี้โทร
All right, so we've got Barb, just simple example here with a few enemies. It throws out this, ephemeral version of the weapon, lands, deals a big chunk of damage, and then pulses over time before returning back to you.
I was a huge fan of double throw in Diablo 2. So
มันทำให้ไม่มีคูลดาวน์ได้คุณซีพิกมันมีของที่เปลี่ยนสกิล
Yeah, it looks sweet too.
Weapon Mastery ให้เป็นของ
like ancient
เอาอยู่นะ
kind of,
ผมว่าเอาอยู่นะ
the VFX looks awesome on it.
So range barb is definitely happening in patch 2.0.
For sure. If you want to spec really heavily on
Passive
this,
my Force
yeah, you're
of
gonna be, throwing
Nature
weapons out like crazy. All right, so we've also got some new key
บาร์ฟ
passes
คาราเพส
and new
ได้ตอน
legendary
เพิ่ม
paragon
บาร์สะท้อน
lists
ต้องมาแล้ว
for every class here.
เอิร์ธ
So
เควก
for
มีโอกาส
barbarian,
ที่จะ
we've
ส
got
ปอน
Orc
ดัสเดวิล
Carapace.
เอิร์ธเควก
This is
ดัส
going-
เดวิล
This is a key passive, so it's going to increase your
Oh.
thorns based on how much fury you're spending. And whenever you cast a skill with a cooldown, it's going to grant you unhindered for a duration, which allows you to move through enemies. And then enemies that are close to you are going to take bonus or going to take damage from your thorns every second. You're going to
เฮ้ย
kind of
บาร์สะท้อนต้องมา
damage
แล้ว
from
ว่ะ
your thorns every second.
บาร์คาราเพ
Now
ส
this is really cool. It really enables Thorns Barb, which we had a little bit of support for, but one of the big problems of Thorns is that you really wanted enemies to hit you and hit you quickly, and this gives you another alternative to deal bonus damage or to really pay off for building up all that Thorns with this new key passive. Additionally, we've got a legendary Paragon node, the Force of Nature. Your Earthquakes have a chance to spawn Dust Devils, and your Earthquake damage is going to be increased by your damage against close enemies. So
มี
this
แคป
really
มีแคป
plays
ทำไม
into
วะ
these Earthquakes and Dust Devil effects, which
เฮ้ย
we kind of call
นี่มันบาร์
sub-powers
พลังธรรม
internally.
ชาติ
These effects that
แผ่น
are
ดิน
not
ไหวเกิด
skills that
พา
you
ยุ
cast directly, but
ตุ่ม
some of your
ตุ่ม
legendary
ตุ่ม
effects
ตุ่ม
will
บาร์พลังธรรมชาติ
spawn these Earthquakes and Dust Devils. This is
โย
just a
น
new
ค้อน
way
ปึ้ง
to
แผ่น
really
ดินไหว
power those
ตุ่
up
ม
and
ตุ่มตุ่ม
blend
ตุ่ม
them
พายุ
together
อ
in
อก
the same build.
อาจจะอ่อนแหละ
Additionally,
แต่
we're
เท่
adding some new passives to the skill tree, and this has really helped to give you a way, along with ultimate skill ranks, to spend a lot of those new points that you're getting by leveling up.
รีบผ่านบาร์บาเลียนสักทีได้ไหมน่าเบื่อจัง
Points you're getting, we're
จะ
giving
ดู
you
เน
some
โค
new ways to invest those.
อะ
All
ไร
right,
เนี่ย
we also got some
ไอ
new
เทมใหม่
items, of course.
Ugly
We've
Bastard
got, the Ugly Bastard Helm, a new unique helm for
ก
Barbarian.
ดอันติวาร์
And
ออ
it
ฟเดอะเบอ
makes
ร์เซอ
you
ร์เกอ
so
ร์ทำให้
ugly
เรา
that
ระเบิด
whenever you are berserking,
ทำดา
all
เมจ
of your damage is converted
ดา
into
เมจทุก
fire damage.
ค่า
And so
เปลี่ยน
that's really interesting.
เปลี่ยนเป็น
Barbars
ธาตุไฟ
had this little bit of like light fire theme. You had a few different effects that dealt fire damage.
กดอัน
And
ติ
now
แล้ว
if you really want to play a
กลายเป็น
fire barb, this is
RF
a unique
Righteous
helm
Fire ระ
for
เบิด
you.
ตุ่มตุ่มตุ่มตุ่มตุ่มตุ่ม
Also
ตุ่ม
playing
ตุ่ม
into that, we've got aspect of Flaming Rampage, which causes your charge to deal some fire damage, and aspect of Shuddering Steel, which will cause your Steel Grasp and Iron Maelstrom to do some bonus physical damage.
ดูอิด
All
ดูอิด
right, moving on to
Stone
the
Burst
Druid. The Druid gets a
Core
new skill, a new core skill, in fact, called Stone Burst. And this is a core skill that's channeled. It kind of has a very unique kind of input mechanism compared to pretty much any other skill in Diablo 4. And as you're channeling it, you target an area, and as you channel it, the affected area grows in size over about 1 second of channeling. And at any point, you can release the channel, and it's going to deal a big burst of damage to whatever size
สกิล
you're
ชาแน
in
ล
on there.
กดค้าง
You
ดอก
can
ใหญ่ขึ้น
tap
จิน
it
ต
really
นา
quickly
การ
and just do one
ใต้
pulse
เท้ามอน
damage to a
ตุ้
small
ม
area,
ระเบิด
or
แม่
you
ง
can
เต็ม
channel
จอ
out for a little bit longer and hit a
200 ดาเม
wider
จ
area, depending on the exact combat scenario you find yourself in, or how the enemies are distributed on the battlefield here. Of course, we've got our upgrades that
คุณกิฟต์
increase
ใส่ได้ไหมดีครับ
damage to the enemies hit in the initial radius. So, really doubling down on that single target capability of a core skill.
250
Primal
ดาเม
Stone
จ
Burst gives you some attack speed, and Raging Stone
อ้าว
Burst
เร็ว
will
จะดู
dramatically increase the spirit cost, but also give it a ton more damage. So if you have a ton of spirit generation, then that might be the upgrade you look for in
อ่ะ
Stone
เร็ว
Burst.
เร็วเร็วเร็ว
Let's see a video of this in action.
ขอดู เฮ้ย
All right, so you see,
เฮ้ยสกิลไม่เท่
picks
เลย
up. There's
ขอ
like
แล้ว
three
ระเบิด
different
ระเบิด อ๋อ
levels,
อ๋อ
like small, medium, and large. In this one, the druid kind of held it for a while.
ส
but
กิล
you
โร
can't
ตี
release it
ส
at
กิล
any
โรตี
time. And
อ๋อ
so
อัน
here
นี้
you
กด
see
ส
a
แปมได้
kind
ก
of
ดสแป
rapid
มได้
firing, a lot of quick, small
อันนี้
shots
ค้าง อันนี้ค้าง อันนี้ค้าง
I knew that would be enough to clear out the enemies here.
ตีโร
And
ตี
also while you're channeling, it does some pulses of damage to enemies in that area as well.
อันนี้สกิลเล็ก
The channel explosion is so satisfying to blow up just so many monsters.
Yeah, it gets
It really
huge
feels
and
amazing.
it looks so sweet too. I really hats off to the
ๆ
VFX
ทำไมต้อง
artists
ควงกระ
who
บอก
worked
ได้ด้วย
on
อีกแต่
these
เท่อะ
skills. Look so beautiful, the new skills here.
ดี
All
ดู
right,
ดู
so
เล
of
ชั่น
course,
เฮ้ย
Druid
เฮ้ย
also has new passives, a new key passive called One with Nature that really empowers
Key
companion
passive
builds.
ใหม่
We've heard a lot that players love
ดู
playing
its
companions,
minion
their
ต้องมาแล้ว
wolves, their poison creepers, their ravens, and this is going to be the key passive for you. So all of your companions
บวกหมาหนึ่งบวกนกหนึ่งบวกดอกไม้หนึ่ง
damage.
ของจริง
And there's also a little bonus, basically, with
ไล่
these
คอม p พ n น
unique
สกิล
passive
บวก
effects
เลเวล
of
คอม p พ n น
all
สกิล
companion skills.
4เลเวล
Now,
5
if
วิ
you're taking this key
เอาแล้ว
passive, you're
เอา
probably
แล้ว
taking these companions
เอา
anyway.
แล้ว
But just in case, your build is such
ทำดาเมจ
that
แรงขึ้น
I just
เวลา
want to take, 2 out of the
สุข
3,
ภาพดี
right? I
เฮ้ย
can put wolves and poison creeper on my bar, but maybe you don't have enough skill slots to put in
ทำดาเมจ
ravens.
แร
You're
ง
still
ขึ้น
going
หลัง
to be
จาก
able to
ใช้
get
อัน
the
ติ
passive effect
ทำ
of
ดาเมจ
that
แรงขึ้น
when
เว
you
ลา
use
เป็น
this
คน
key passive.
ทำดาเมจ
Which
แรง
is what
ขึ้น
have
หลังจากไล่
tons
defensive
of these
สรุปดูอิด
companions, really
บัฟอะไรเนี่ย
leading the charge here.
บัฟแต่
We've
มิน
also
เนียน
got Untamed, a new legendary Paragon node that plays right into this One with Nature key passive. Casting the companion skill is going to increase the companion's
สรุป
companion
ดูอิด
active
ต้องเป็น
skill
มินเนียน
to
แล้ว
grant you bonus ranks
แล้ว
to all of your
เนโค
companion
ไปเป็น
skills
บิล
for
กับ
time to really
แคสเตอร์
up
แทน
the damage of those. Just like before, we've got some new new passives coming into the skill tree as well. I think some of these might have some temporary icons on them. So like I said, these were from an early build. Some of the icons or very specific art might be adjusted. So, bear with us. This is the nature of PTR and early development. All right, moving on to some of the items.
ขอดูไอเทมใหม่ดูหมาบ้าดิดูหมาดิดูหมาดิเห็นไหม
Really leading a wolf pack here, right? So this includes wolves with the Storm's Companion to turn them into lightning werewolves. And I'm sure there's some other ones here, like aspect of the Stampede is probably involved. You just have, what is that, 7 wolves following you around? You really get to lead the wolf pack with this.
This is the best video in our presentation. Well, actually, no, sorry. This is the second best video in our presentation. You guys will see the best video in our presentation, but yeah, this is so good.
Yeah. For all you werewolf lovers out there,
this
one is going to be really sweet. I'm really looking forward to playing with this in patch 2.0.
เขาบอกนี่ไม่ใช่ของดีที่สุดมีก็ดีกว่านี้ Stone of Vehement
So they've got the Stone of Vehement. This is
ไล่สกิล Stone Burst 2 Second ได้ Damage Reduction Stone Burst เร็วแรงขึ้น
and the final explosion will deal increased damage based on how long you were channeling it. So this just really encourages you to build it up to that max size and let off a huge explosion. And gives you some damage reduction. So you're kind of
มีเวอร์ชันที่ cast ปุ๊บใหญ่สุดเลยด้วยโอเค
We've got a little bit more legendaries on Druid than the other classes, just because
Rabbit
Stoneburst being
Bear.
a core skill. We know that the kind of
Ray
bar
Beast.
to make a core skill
Storm
really
Crow.
viable and useful. It does need a good amount of legendary
Agile
items
Wolf
to support
Shred.
it to really make a full
Buck
build
Shred.
out of it. So that's why we've added 2 legendaries here for Stoneburst. We've got the aspect of Anticline Burst, which causes Stoneburst to deal increased damage. And if you cast it at or above 100 spirit,
เนโคจะไม่เยอะกว่านี้
it's going to
รอดู
immediately
นะ
be at that maximum size.
เครียด
You
เลย
don't
เนี่ยตอนนี้
necessarily need to channel it as long as you are casting it when you have a lot of spirit. This synergizes really well with the Earth and Might key passive, which gives you full spirit when it triggers. So you can trigger Earth and Might and then immediately get a huge stone burst. We've got aspect of Shattered Defenses, which alters Stone Burst in a rather interesting way.
นกหมูไหม
It causes
นกเพิ่มขึ้น
Stone
ตัวหนึง
Burst,
นะ
or Stone Burst causes enemies
จาก
to
2 ตัวเป็น
take
3 ตัว
increased damage from your other skills for a time and reduces Stone Burst spirit cost. This kind of converts Stone Burst away from necessarily being your primary damage source to being a bit more of a setup skill. Right, you can kind of debuff enemies, and then you can find some interesting builds where you have other ways.
ก็คงได้เล่นแหละ Stone Burst แต่ว่าคงเล่นซัมมอนมากกว่านะ
primary damage source,
บัฟมาข
and
นาด
then
นี้
use Stone Burst to kind of set up that build. Really interesting to see how players, what kind of builds you make with Shattered Defenses. Additionally, we've got aspect of the Rabid Bear, which empowers your
นก
Grizzly
ไม่น่ามี
Rage
เป็น
to
ยานส
apply
ถิต
rabies and
เดี๋ยว
increase poison output.
ดูอิดมันมีนกอยู่แล้ว
Storm Crow, which
อี
is
กา
just lightning ravens. Your ravens are now lightning. It looks awesome. And aspect of the Agile Wolf, which gives Shred a 4th attack. Shred normally is like a 3-part combo, and now it's a 4-part combo that deals even more damage on that 4th hit, and it's going to knock down enemies as well.
เนโค
All right, so that is Druid. Really looking forward to playing some Druid
สกิลใหม่เว้ย
2.0.
อัน
But let's move on to the Necromancer.
สกิลใหม่เป็นอันติ ใครเป็นคนคิดวะ
We've got Soul Rift. This is a new Darkness ultimate skill. So Necromancers kind of had 3 ultimates already. They had one that was blood, one that was bone, and one that was
8 วิ
related to summoning. And now we
ขัด
kind of
ขวาง
use
สิ่ง
it
มี
and
ชีวิต
add
รอบๆ
darkness
ทำ
or
ดาเมจเป็น
shadow
ดอท
damage
ดูด
ultimates.
วิญญาณ
Soul
ได้
Rift
เอเซนต์
creates
ได้
an
บา
area
เลีย
around your character, kind of follows with you, that just constantly deals damage over time.
เพิ่มดาเม
And
จ
it's going to be sucking out the souls of enemies who you're hitting.
ศัตรู
And
ติ
every
ด
time it sucks out a
vulnerable
soul from an enemy, you're going to gain some essence,
อะไร
and you're going to gain a barrier. So you
อะ
can
ไร
stack up this barrier. It helps you be survivable, and
Whoa.
it deals really good damage over time. Supreme Soul Rift gives you bonus damage for every soul that you
เสีย
absorb,
เลย
and Prime Soul Rift causes
อะไร
the soul absorption to
เดี๋ยว
also.
เราลอง
apply
ดูมัน
vulnerable.
ยืนใช้นะ
Let's take a video of this in action here.
ขอดูหน่อย
Right, so enemies
The
all
barrier is
coming up.
super
Oh.
useful, Charles.
มัน
right?
มัน
No,
ใช้เอง
like, you have another way
Oh,
to give
oh,
yourself
oh,
defenses.
oh, oh, okay.
Necro has historically had some trouble with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really important part
Okay.
here. And
อ๋อผมนึกว่าต้อง channel ไม่ต้องนี่กดแล้วมันก็ดูดอัตโนมัติ
I'll highlight. We're adding a bit more barrier into the Necromancer's kit.
เนโคดอทต้องมาแล้ว
Blood Necromancers always had a really easy time surviving. They had a lot of fortify and a lot of max health. And really the other ones like the bone and shadow Necker didn't have quite as much survivability, and so now we're introducing more barrier in more places to ensure that kind of non-blood necromancer builds, the shadow and the bone,
มหาเวทดุดาว
necros, have a bit more
ส่งฝาก
survivability
กู
and are
ป้าย
able to scale into that late game pretty well. All right, so as I mentioned, the new passive. So they have
Passive
a
ใหม่วะ
key passive called Affliction that
ศัตรูที่ติด vulnerable เขา control shadow damage overtime โดน affliction รับ damage มากขึ้น
or shadow damage
first ทำ damage ใส่ศัตรูที่ติด affliction
will apply them with Affliction, which is going to make them take increased damage from
คือเอาให้มาใช้แทน shadow blight ถูกไหม
Additionally, when you apply a curse skill to someone or to an enemy who has this affliction, you're going to do a big chunk of shadow damage. So this kind of turns your curse skills, your Decrepify and Iron Maiden, into offensive skills. You can curse an area and then they take a big chunk of damage as well. And then this will scale up with the bonus damage that you've dealt, or the bonus affixes that you have for that crowd control, vulnerable, and shadow damage. And along that same theme, the new legendary Paragon node Frailty is going to cause cursed enemies to take more damage from you, and so it plays very nicely with the Affliction.
โอ้อันนี้โคตรดี
And,
passive บนขวา
once again, more
lucky hit
more
damage
skill-free
มีโอกาส
passives to spend those
ที่จะ
extra
ได้
points
บา
on.
เรียเท่า
I
กับ
don't want to highlight
5% ของเลือด
Necrotic Fortitude here in the upper right
ใช้ได้
that
เลย
gives you just a
ใช้
generic
ได้
passive that gives you a chance, a lucky hit chance to gain a barrier, and so that's going to be really good for anybody who wants just a bit more bump of survivability and to play into the more barrier focused on Necromancer.
Yeah, going back to Affliction really quick, I love the idea of using my curses offensively, like as a damage skill. I think that's going to be such a blast.
Yeah, it's
Literally.
really cool to just, yeah, definitely gonna be blasting with them. I think it's really thematic too. I love playing with it.
It pairs really well with the utility changes now that we have way more size
แต่
increases.
unique ใหม่อะ
Utility gives you so many more utility options. Those curses
ใน
get
โคเมมี unique ใหม่เลยอะ
and it feels great.
Yeah,
Yeah, for all of us who just want to win by debuff spamming, I love that one.
absolutely. All right, let's talk about some of the new items coming for Necromancer here. So we've got new
Unmaker
unique item, the
Soul Lift บวก
Unmaker, a
4 Soul Lift
unique
duration
talent.
เพิ่มระยะ
This is
ทุก
going to empower the
30%
Soul Rift, the new ultimate skill. Of course, you gain some skill ranks to Soul Rift.
Shadow
Now
damage per
ultimate skills
second
have skill ranks. And every 30 essence that you spend while Soul Rift is active will increase its duration up to 8 seconds. So
ไม่มี
as
cooldown
long as you're active and kind of spending the essence with the Unmaker, you're going to have a very long duration of Soul Rift. And then for every essence that you gain while it's active, which absorbing the souls does trigger
จริงๆใช้เป็นตัว
you're
ทำ
going to
ดาเม
do
จ
a
ก็ได้นะ
pulse of
ไม่รู้ส
damage
เกล
around
ดี
you,
ข
so
นาดไหน
some bonus
แต่มัน
damage.
ไม่มี
And so
cooldown เอ๊ะ
really encourage you to just keep Soul Rift up all the time, be constantly gaining and spending the essence, and it's going to be really, really fun to make that build work. Additionally, we've got Reaping Lotus aspect. This
โอเค
empowers
Silver no
Sever,
longer
your core
return
skill.
กลายเป็น3
Sever will
Spectre
no longer return to you. Previously, Sever was kind of an out and back situation. Now it just goes out, and then it splits into 3 Spectres at the end, deals some extra bonus damage,
Gluttony
and then that's the end of the cycle.
Golem
So it really does empower it on the
ก
swing
ด
out.
แล้วระเบิด
Looks really cool. We got aspect of Fell Gluttony that empowers your Golem.
Bone
Whenever you cast
Spirit
your
ระเบิด
Golem's
Spell
active, deals
Spirit
repulsive damage around it. And your
อ้าว
Golem
บ
will
น
then
สปิริต
use
กูก็บัฟ
suitable
รัวๆ
bonuses
เลย
to
เว้ย
reduce its cooldown. So anybody who really wants to build around making your Golem as strong as possible, this is going to be the aspect for you. And finally, we've got Phasing Poltergeists aspect, which causes your Bone Spirit to split into 3 spirits that deal a percentage of the damage as well. I think we got a video clip of this one because it looks really sweet.
คำถามคือเอาช่องที่ไหนมาใส่
Bone Spirit at
aspect
one target,
ส
and
ว
then
ย
spawns 3
ส
little
วย
mini Bone Spirits to seek out nearby enemies as well.
2.0
Increased area of effect, and
ใช้
if
ได้
it's just one
ถ้าได้
target,
ดู
it
มันใช้ได้
will reconverge back on that same
มี
target
หลาย
as
ๆ คอน
well.
เซปต์ที่
But also just adds a
เข้าใจ
more
แต่ยังไม่รู้
AoE
สึก
capability for your Bone Spirit build.
ต้องลองเล่นจริง
Very cool.
โอเค
All right. So
สกิล
Rogue.
โล
Rogue gets Dance of Knives.
สกิล
This
เคลื่อน
is a
ที่
new channeled skill for Rogue. It's an agility cutthroat skill. And it also has a pretty interesting mechanic where it has some charges.
ไอ้ดูคอนเทนต์
that
ใหม่ใน
recharge,
DLC
and the
ยังไม่ค่อย แต่มีแล้วเนี่ย
how
พวก
long you
คลา
can
สใหม่
channel
ส
it
กิล
is
ใหม่
based
ก็
on how
เข้า
many
แล้ว
charges you have. It's going to take 1 charge per second of channeling, but there's no energy cost or just like a normal cooldown.
อ่ะขอดูหน่อย
You can
Dance
just
of Knife
channel it as long as you have charges.
ห่
And
วย
while
สุ
you're
ดเลย
channeling,
ถ้า
you're
ได้
going
ดู
to be spinning around. You're going to be throwing knives at enemies nearby. and you're
เอา
gaining
ของ
movement
เท่ๆไว้
speed
ก่อน
and dodge chance. Really is kind of like a
Amelie
spin
มา
to
ยัง
win
ยาว
kind of build on Rogue here. You got enhanced dance
ยาว
denies,
อ่ะ
which
วัน
gives
เนี้
you
ย
some charge refund as you're moving with it, because that's what we really
ถึ
want
ง
to
ครึ่ง
encourage.
ส
is
ตรีม
this
หรือยังยังไม่รู้เลยตอน
cross
นี้
motion, this
น่าจะ
forward
ยัง
momentum. And methodical dance of knives drops some stun grenades when you finish channeling,
ข
or
อดูตัวอย่าง
disciplined
สกิล
knives
ก็พอ
will
แล้ว
slow
ไม่
enemies
มี
and
ใคร
have
ใช้
to
หรอก
pierce through
ส
the
กิล
enemies
โล
with
บ
your
เคลื่อน
throwing
ที่
daggers
เย
now.
อะแยะ แด
Let's take a look at
ช
this in action. So here we got
โอเค
the rogue
เท่
just
ดีล่ะ
going spinning, throwing some
เท่
daggers
ดี
around at everyone, and
คำถามคือ
yeah,
This is awesome for speed farming. This
ถ้า
is
มันเป็น
really
ค
cool
อ นะ
buffing
Yeah.
skill.
ถ้าเปลี่ยนเป็นสกิลนี้เป็นคอ
And that
นะ
animation
Yeah.
โค
is
ตร
just
เท่
amazing.
absolutely. And you can see there at the end they had
ถู
the
กป่ะ
upgrade
ถ้ามัน
that
มี
drops
ดา
a
เม
bunch
จ
of stun grenades.
หมุนหมุนหมุน
Because
หมุน
if
หมุนหมุนหมุนหมุน
enemies were all dead,
ระ
but
เบิ
you
ด
know, if you use this to get into a big cluster of enemies, then you stop the channel, you drop some stun grenades, reset some of your charges,
อันนี้กำลังโชว์ส
and
กิล
you're
ใหม่
good to
ใช่
start
ครับ
spinning again. Ton of fun.
ทุกครั้งมีสกิลใหม่หมดเล
Yeah,
ย
those are perfect for like you run into an elite pack after slaughtering a bunch of nobles.
dealing
and just
3 different non
annihilates the
fit
elites. It feels amazing.
potency ของ imbu
Yeah.
skill
All
40%
right, so we've got new passives as well.
ไล่
New key
mobility
passive is
เพิ่ม
alchemical
damage
admixture.
critical
And this is
marksman
empowering your
cut increase
non-physical damage. So rogues can
ได้
do
damage 4
poison,
วิหลังจาก
shadow, and
evade หลัง
cold
จาก
through their
ดอทได้
various
damage
units.
ultimate
And
แร
when
ง
you
ขึ้น
deal 3 different types of that non-physical
คุณ
damage,
ชื่อชาติ
the
ครับ
potency
ลิ
of
ขิม
your
ห่วง
unit skills is going to be dramatically increased for a time. And the more bonus damage that you build on your gear for bonus poison, shadow, or cold damage, the further that potency gets increased. Really encouraging you to mix and match the different elements. It's really
สกิลใหม่ต้องซื้อเดียวสิเฮ้ยไม่ต้องสิปะโถ
really
ถ้ามัน
supporting
ไม่ใช่
the
คลาส
build
ใหม่ก็
rogue
ไม่ต้อง
that
ซื้อ
we've kind of had in the game, but really wanted to give that robust support of a key passive for. And also we've got a legendary Paragon node, the Dance Macabre, which encourages this kind of 1-2 combo of casting mobility or subterfuge skill, increasing
สรุป
damage
นะ
of your next skill, whatever it might be, by quite a substantial amount. So you can, cast
Rapid
your
fire
dash,
เหมือนเดิม
position yourself, cast a big rain of arrows.
อัพไอ้โหนด
It's
ใหม่เนี่ย
very hard. Very
แล้วก็
cool
ใช้
and,
สกิลอะไรก็ได้
actually impacts your
เคลื่อนที่ออก
moment
มาแล้ว
well
ก็
very
rapid
as
fire
well.
50%
And of course we've got the new skill tree passives as well.
โอเค โอเค
All
พิท
right,
ไฟเตอร์
new
กาวแหวน
items.
อีกแล้วเหรอ
We've got the Pit
ไล่
Fighter's
สโมก
Gall.
เกเนต
This
เพิ่ม
is
ควิด
the
ดาเมจ
ancestral unique ring.
และ
Or sorry, just it's
ไล่
unique ring. It's not
Cloud of
it's a
Shadow ไว้
unified
ข้างหลัง
ancestral tier.
ในขณะที่อยู่ในคราว
And
ได้
this
ส
Pit
เตล
Fighter's Gall will empower your smoke grenade. So your smoke grenade skill
เริ่มซีซั่นใหม่อีก
will
นานไหม
will increase your critical strike damage
อีก
and then leave a
30
cloud of
กว่าวัน
shadows
ครับ
behind.
ประมาณ
While you're within
4-5 อาทิต
that
ย์
cloud of shadows, you're going to be constantly regaining stealth. And so there's a lot of interesting ways you can
แต่
play
แหวน
off
แหวน
of
ใหม่ดูถึกดิ
triggering
แหวน
going
ใหม่ดูถึก
into
มาก
a
เลย
lot of stealth, and Pit Fighter's Gall is just going to really enable that when you cast Smoke Grenade. We've got an aspect of Star Shards. This is a new legendary to directly support Dance of Knives, and the daggers from Dance of Knives have a chance to shatter, dealing
เฮ้ย
creating more
ทำเป็น
shards of
build
metal that
damage ได้ไหม
deal
ล่ะ
bonus
คำถามอะ
damage.
มี
And
aspect เดียวมัน
you
จะ
can
ไป
now
พอได้
use
ไง
combo points on Dance of Knives
เฮ้ยเดี๋ยว
to further
เดี๋ยว
increase the channel duration if you've
เฮ้ย
combo points specialization.
ใช้คอม
Aspect
โบ
of
ได้
Poisonous
เอา
Clouds
แล้ว
plays
เอา
well
แล้ว
with
เอา
Pit
แล้ว
Fighter's
เอาแล้ว
Gall. When you gain stealth, you
Pa,
create
pa.
a cloud of poison damage.
ตุ่มตุ่ม
And
ตุ่ม
aspect
ตุ่ม
of
ตุ่มตุ่ม
Splintering Shards,
Pa, pa.
there's just a
Combo,
chance
combo,
whenever you're
combo,
hitting a
combo.
frozen
Ao
enemy to create some ice spikes. So if you're freezing enemies because you're playing alchemical
คุณ
admixture
ดัก
using cold imbue,
นั่นคือคอนเทนต์
shards
ใหม่ของ
might
เกม
be
เลย
a good aspect for
คุณ
you
ดั
as
ก
well.
แอบดูสปอยล์มาใช่ไหมเนี่ยนั่นคือคอนเทนต์ใหม่ของเกม
All
Sorceress
right, moving on
Skill
to
ใหม่
Sorceress.
Conjuration
Sorceress gets a new conjuration skill
Summon
called the Familiar. This
Summon,
is a
summon.
conjuration skill that is all 3 elements. It is a shock skill, a pyromancy skill, and a frost skill. So there's 3 charges of it, so you can cast it, back to back, and you summon a familiar of the element
Summon
of your
อิมออกมา
last skill cast. So if you just cast a pyromancy skill, you're going to summon a fire familiar. If you just cast a lightning skill, you'll summon a
เอ้ย
lightning
ซอซัม
familiar,
มอนว่ะ
and same with a cold, you'll summon a cold familiar. And with the enhanced effect, these familiars will do bonus effect. So the fire familiar will constantly apply some burning to
โอ้
enemies
แต่
that
มัน
it's
แม็ก
around.
แค่ 6
The
ตัว
cold
มันก็ไม่
familiar
เท่
will
เลย
chill, and lightning familiar will stun.
Huh?
And of course, their damage type is
ขอ
going
ดู
to
หน่อย
be
ว่า
as
มันน่า
well.
รักขนาดไหน
How
มัน
big
จะเป็น
they are,
โกเลม
so
ห
then
รือ
it'll
มันจะเป็น
benefit
อิม
all
ห
of
รือมันจะเป็น
your,
ยังไง
bonus fire damage.
ดูรูปแล้วเหมือนจะเป็นโก
That
เลม
aura
Let's take
trials is really great, right? To
เหมือน
tap
เป็นแบบ
into some of
morphing
the,
อะไรประ
or
มาณ
the
นี้ใช่ไหม
passives on the sorcerer.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if there's a lot of passives that say, hey, you get bonuses against burning enemies, for instance. Now, if you have the Fire Familiar, that's going to really easily be able to apply that constantly, and you're going to have pretty high uptime on having familiars out because of the way the charge and duration works.
เฮ้ย
Let's take
เดี๋
a
ยว
look
นะ
at this in action.
ขอดูหน่อยโชว์ไป
All
กี่
right,
คา
so
ร์ด
initially we cast a frost familiar.
อันนี้
here,
น่าจะ
right?
คาร์ดสุดท้ายละ
It's jumping around and it's landing, it's dealing frost damage.
อ๋อ
Then we cast a fire skill. Now we get a fire familiar jumping around and kind of dive bombing on enemies. And then finally we get a shock familiar, a lightning familiar here that's going to deal
ขอ
lightning
ดูแบบ
damage.
6 ตัว
So
นะ
you can
ขอ
kind
ดู
of
แบบ
mix
6
and
ตัว
match these
6 ตัว 6 ตัว
depending on what skills you
6
use,
ตัว
what combination you cast them in. And it's really flexible. It fits into a lot of different builds. You know, even if you're just a pure, say, fire sword and you just want to do
สกิล
fire
แอคทีฟ
damage,
ใหม่
just
คาร์ดละ
want to
1
do
ใช่
burning,
ครับ
this could
แล้วก็
still
พาส
fit
ซีฟ
because
อีกประ
you're
มา
just
ณ
going to be able to
6
summon
7
the
อัน
fire familiar. But it really reaches its maximum potential as you're kind of mix and matching these to suit the situation and apply the debuffs that you want onto the enemies.
You can have quite a few of these out. For the Sega demonstration, I think we only have a couple of them out on screen, but I think you can have up to like 6, right?
Yeah, you can have up to 6, and that would make a lot more sense once we get to talk about some of the unique items.
เดี๋ยวขอดูว่าทำไมมันได้แค่ 6
But first, let's talk about
พาสซีฟ
the
ใหม่
passives,
Enlightenment
and we've got
ไล่สกิล
Enlightenment.
ได้สแต็ก
This really
Enlightenment
also plays into the concept of mixing and matching the elements.
หลังจากได้
It's got
100
all
สแต็ก
three kind of colors
กลาย
on
เป็น
there.
Enlighten
Casting a skill grants a stack of enlightenment or
ตีแรงขึ้น
3
มานา
stacks
รี
if
เจน
your
เร็ว
skill
ขึ้น
was a different
ตี
element
เร็ว
from the
ขึ้น
one before. So you're alternating here.
Fundamental
And
Release
whenever you gain
ทุก
max
การไล่ส
stats,
กิล
you're
ไฟ
you're
Lightning
enlightened
Core
and you get a ton of bonuses for being in this enlightened state. But then it drops off over
ที่
time.
เราโจมตีศัตรูเพิ่ม
Really a
ดาเม
reward
จ
for
ที่
mixing
ศั
and
ตรู
matching
รับ
those elements more so than
10% ต่อ
any
ท่า
other key passive we've had on Sorc before. And similarly with the legendary Paragon,
Enlightenment ผมว่าใช้ได้
release,
ผมว่า
each
เหมือน
fire
เหมือน
lightning from
Warden
attack you make in
ของ
Synergy
PoE
increases
ที่
the
เพิ่ง
damage
บัฟ
you
มาเลย
take from all sources by 10%. So you
เวลา
really
เล่น
need
จริง
to hit them
ติด
with all
บ่อย
three
มากค
types
รับ
to gain
ติ
the
ดบ่อย
maximum
มาก
bonus here. All right, on to the unique items.
โอเคยูนิคใหม่ Citadel
Citadel
Bindings
This is a unique gloves.
ไล่ Familiar นะ Summon all 3 element
So whenever you cast
Summon
familiar
3
with
ตัว
this
เลยที
unique
เดียว
on, you're going to summon all 3 elemental variants at once. However, it does come with a bit of restrictions on it. So familiar's duration is going to be
ลง
dramatically
PTR หมด
increased,
น่าจะลงหมด
and its cooldown reduced, but you're going to have one less charge of it. So you won't be able to spam this quite as much, but you press the button once or twice, and then you get the maximum familiars out. They're all over the screen, and they're going to last for quite a long time with this unique glove. So it's going to be really, really powerful too. If you're all about this conjuration build, all about amping up the power of the familiar, it's an awesome unique for that.
ได้บิวใหม่เล่นแล้วซอ
Additionally, we've got new
โคตรเท่
legendaries for the aspect of overheating. After channeling Incinerate for a time, you're going to deal bonus damage to the target. And casting Incinerate will refresh and maintain the bonus. So really just powering up your Incinerate. Charged Flash, this empowers charged bolts. And after you hit a certain number of enemies with charged bolts, your next 3 casts of charged bolts will no longer send out bolts. They're going to send out big waves of lightning that deal even more damage, and it's always going to be a crit. And then aspect of Elemental Constellation, once again, more about the mixing and matching of all 3 elements. Casting one of the elemental skills will summon a matching type elemental dagger that'll pierce through enemies. And the damage of that dagger is going to be increased if you get all 3 of the different element types in that time frame. All right, so
เอาลี่ยังเงียบอยู่เลยครับ
right,
Mythic
we've
unique
got
ใหม่
new Mythic uniques. Of course, how could I forget? New
Shroud
Mythic
of Foul
unique
Death
items. These are the strongest items in the
ถ้า
game.
ไม่ได้ทำการโจม
We've
ตี
got
ภายใน
the
2 วิ
Shroud
ได้
of
Stealth
False Death. And I think the really cool part about this is it's just inherent affects. It's going to grant +1 skill rank
บิว
to
โล
all
กนุก
passives.
นุกระเบิด
And this is really awesome as we're adding new passives into the skill tree. This is just a
ดูหมวกดีกว่า
ton of
Air
power
of
for this new
Prediction
chest.
Quick
And
Change
its
Lucky
effect
Hit
is,
Movement
if you have
Core
an
Skill
attack in the last 2 seconds, you're going to gain stealth and bonus movement speed. Now, stealth historically has just been a mechanic that has been on rogues and a little
ยอม
bit
ใช้
on
พลังของ
druids,
Lilith
the werewolf builds.
และเพิ่ม
But
ดา
now
เมจที่
every
ทำ
class,
คูณ
if you get
1.6
this mythic unique, is going to have some access to stealth. You can, drop out of combat for a little bit, and then you get into stealth, and you get tons of movement speed to, maybe move on to the next pack or move somewhere else in the dungeon.
เพิ่มดาเมจ
And it's a really
200%
simple
ใส่
all
Angel และ
passives,
Demon
but it's literally all
เรามี
passives,
Angel ให้
which
สู้
is
ตั้งแต่เมื่อไหร่
insane.
วะ
Like it's incredibly powerful.
Absolutely.
บวก1 Passive เดี๋ยว
We also have the Air of
เสื้อมัน
Perdition,
บวก
the
1 to all
Mythic
Passive
helm. And
โค
this
ตร
one
โกง
has an interesting effect. So it says give into hatred and earn Lilith's favor, increasing your damage dealt by 60%. So just baseline, this is a huge damage bonus. And the second line here says slaughtering enemies to briefly steal Lilith's favor from, or slaughter enemies to briefly steal Lilith's favor from nearby allies. So this means if you're playing in a group with somebody else who happens to have the Air of Perdition equipped, you are able to steal Lilith's favor from them. Lilith will only favor one of you, and you actually gain double the bonus of this, right? If you
หมวก
steal
ใหม่
someone
แย่ง
else's
บัฟ
favor,
กับ
you
เพื่อน
get 120% bonus
ตี
damage,
หนึ่งใส่ได้แค่
and
คนเดียว
they would get
ถ้าใส่
zero.
2 คนแม่งแย่งบัฟกันเอง
But if you're just playing this solo, no one else has their Perdition around, it's just a flat 60% bonus damage, which is still a ton and very impactful for a Mythic unique. All right, I believe that is actually everything. Wow, that is so
อัน
much
นี้เป็น
new class content,
ชนิด
new
มอน
skills,
เตอร์
new legendaries, new everything. And I didn't even get to talk about some of our other, more regular class balance changes, updates to existing skills and legendaries. So make sure you definitely check out the patch notes. There is still more changes to come, but we're already really deep into this campfire chat, and we didn't want to extend it too much longer. So make sure you check out the patch notes for all the details on those other changes coming as well.
Yeah, thank you so
แพท
much,
ชโน้ตน่า
Charles.
จะยาว
I know we have gone through a lot of information. We're in hour 1.5 of this campfire chat. As I said, and I mentioned on social, like this is going to be a very beefy campfire chat. We still have 2 more things that we do want to really cover off. And as Charles had mentioned, there are a lot of other class changes that we didn't actually fit within the presentation, like a lot of balance specific items. So that will be on patch notes, and patch notes will be available on our blog for PTR immediately after the stream. So please check that out. We are going to jump into some quality of life items. And so, Colin, do you want to take us through
เสื้อ
some
ใหม่
of
กับ
the
ทีเดียว
quality of life
คิดยาก
items?
จะใส่เสื้อไหน ถ้าเป็นโลกผมคงใส่เสื้อใหม่ครับ
Yeah, I'll go quick
ถ้าผม
so we
เล่น
can
โล
get
ก
to
อะนะ
the super exciting, cool thing. Yeah, so the first one here
Quality of
is you
life
can now
ผู้เล่น
select
ต่อไป
your
นี้
preferred town portal location. So how
สา
that's
มารถ
going to
เลือก
work
เมือง
is
ที่
you're
ช
going
อบ
to
วา
open
ร์
up
ป
the
ไปได้
map
แล้
and
ว
over any of the waypoints, and when you right click on it,
กด T แล้วมันจะ
it's
วา
gonna
ร์ป
set
ไป
that
เมือง
as
ที่เราชอบ
essentially your preferred
แทนที่จะเป็น
location.
เมือง
And
ใก
whenever
ล้
you town portal, it's going to take you there. So this is really helpful for when you're doing whispers, for example. You just set the tree of whispers as your preferred location, do some whispers. When you press T, you go
Hey.
right there. You don't have to open up the
Hey.
map, then click on the waypoint, then click on accept. Like it's all very seamless, and it's just removing a lot of the
ปรับ
inputs
ข
that
นาด
you
นี้
have
ไม่
to
ต้องซื้อ
do to
DLC
get
ก็
back
ได้
to town quickly.
ซื้อเถอะดันเจียนคีย์
The next thing here is we're adding
Inventory
dungeon
tab.
key inventory tab
ไม่กิน
for
แท็บคน
things
อื่น
like nightmare sigils. So that just gives you more space for more activities. So much room for activities. The next one here is we've done a pretty
Nerf
substantial
monster
rework of monster CC.
Vampire
This is
Impale
in the
ยิง
spirit
ปุ้ง
of,
รอสตัน
we
ต่อ
want
ไป
to
นี้
have really
แค่ขยับ
clear
ไม่ได้
sort of delineations
Goatman
between
Mauler
normal monsters
Overhead
and elite
ปึ้งน็อกดาว
monsters.
น์ล้มเลย
We didn't
ต่อไปนี้
like
แค่
how
พั
often
ง
we
หัก
were
ไปข้าง
getting
หลัง
slowed down and how mandatory
Werewolf
the
Lead
stopping
Attack
could feel.
Daze
So I
แค่
always
knock
felt
back
bad to be fighting this huge horde of enemies, and you see
มอน
this
สเตอร์ที่มี
elite
แอนิเม
paying
ชันใน
attention
การ
to the
ตาย
lead, and then
นาน
this
ต่อไปนี้
Goatman
จะสั้น
model
ลง
comes
เช่น
up and like
Spider
sneak
Host
attacks you and
Coffin
knocks you
Fly
down for
Host
3 seconds, and that's the thing that kills you. That always felt like bullshit, right? So what we've done is we've sort of overhauled a lot of the normal monster CCs to be quick and snappy. Like you still feel them, you kind of want to avoid them still, but they're much less
ผม
sort
ว่า
of
โอ
the
เคแล้ว
reason why
ผม
you
ว่าโอ
die
เคมาก
entirely. So the vampire
ไม่รู้คนอื่น
impale,
คิดว่าไง
when
แต่ผม
like
คิดว่าโอ
the
เคมาก
two-hander like comes and stabs you and stuns you for 3 seconds, that's turned into an immobilize. So you can't move, but you can just smack him in the face. And then the werewolf leap is another great example where previously they'd come out of stealth and like leap attack on you, and you get dazed and you'd walk around confused. And now they just does a quick knockback. This next change here is small, but I think it's a blaster's delight, which is all the monsters that had really long death animations all die instantly. You don't have to wait for the loot to hit the ground. It's very satisfying. The big ass like spider hosts that crawl towards you. When you kill them, they pop instantly, and all the spiders go and hit the walls, and it feels great. The zombies feel really good too. Like they pop instantly when you kill them. And it's a very satisfying experience. So this should speed up combat quite a bit, and it just feels really good.
โอเค Socketable Inventory
The
Tab
next thing here is their socketable inventory tab, another tab for you to put
มี
socketables
แท็บเพิ่ม
like gems and other socketables. And then there's
ใส่
also
ของ
an
ที่เป็น
additional stash tab
ช่อง
that
เอาไว้
we're gonna
Socket
add.
Stash
The
tab
next thing, if we could roll the clip, we took out just
ขอดู
about
หน่อย
all the
เสียงพี่เสียงไปไหนอะ
all would go up, and then like click on the plunger,
เฮ้ย
don't get hit by the spikes. That's all been replaced entirely with just monster packs of varying sizes, and it's just way more seamless. In this case, we only rolled some normal monsters, but sometimes it's a couple of elite packs. You never really know what you're going to get. It's like an Easter or a Kinder egg, I should say. And it just helps the dungeon flow substantially, like to just sort of blast through those things. And then a handful of dungeons have had their procedural logic updated, just so there's more variation in the layouts. So when you play it, it's going to roll out differently. This is really just iterating on our dungeon set to make them feel much more sort of flow-inducing.
ต่อไปนี้เลเวลอัพ Paragon Point ที่ยังไม่ได้อัพจะโชว์ว่า
minor, but actually
ยังไม่ได้อัพกี่ point
pretty good, and it has a big impact on the game. When you get those Paragon and level up notifications, we're actually going to tell you how many. So sometimes you'll realize, oh my god, I have like 15 skill points I can spend. And it actually tells you the number. It's a nice quality of life change. So I think that's everything.
Awesome. Thank you, Colin, for running through quickly. I appreciate the efficiency of going through all the quality of life changes. Now I know Jeevan has been very quiet over here. He's only chimed in a little bit. And we do want to talk about a new thing that is coming to Vessel of Hatred specifically, and for Vessel of Hatred
เฉพาะคนที่ซื้อ expansion มีอะไรว่ามา
you talk us through it a little bit?
Yeah, so it's my privilege to kind of talk about a feature that the whole team's been working very hard on that we haven't really
คิดว่าเอาน้อยจังมันอยู่ที่
much.
expansion หมดแล้ว
And you know, we looked at the expansion. We had all these cool things, you know, torment, new class skills, spiritborn, but we thought there was a hole, and we wanted to particularly give build crafters a new way to play for Vessel of Hatred.
Build crafter
This is
a
for
new way
folks
to play
who, like me, whose dream cooking show has nothing to do with British baking, but instead would be called Colin's Kitchen. Twitch chat, if you would binge Colin's Kitchen, let us know. So yeah, let's. And I think some of you already kind of have an idea. So yeah, let's get into. As some of you already know, we're going to be talking about Runewords.
Runewords
Yeah. So let's start with a little background. So Runewords were in Diablo 2. And they were a very powerful way of augmenting gear with socketable content. And there's a lot of good sort of nostalgic feelings. They were popular. They were remembered fondly. You can look on the right. That's one of the most iconic
Enigma
examples from Diablo 2. The name is Enigma, and you would make it with runes Ja If Bur, and it would get you some really cool skills that would come out of it when you put it all together. And for Diablo 4, we wanted to retain the soul of what Diablo 2 Runewords did, which is combining socketable components and creating more powerful items. But we also wanted to do something that felt appropriately fresh and new, and we wanted to lean into what's unique
อยาก
about
รัก
the
ษา
modern
สไตล์ของ
game
D2
to
ไว้
make the
แต่
Diablo
อยากให้มัน
4
modern
version of Runewords and make it stand on its own and really feel
ขอดูหน่อย
like the right version to be given to
โอ้
player.
Yeah, and what was
ยู
awesome
กา
about Diablo 2
ลูนหาเลยไม่เคยได้ยิน
Runewords,
ชื่อ
right,
เลย
was
เฮ้ย
you
ปิด
got
ทำไม
this
เรา
set
จะดู
of runes that made a god item, right? And it broke the rules, like being able to teleport on other classes. Like, what the hell? Barbarian is teleporting across the screen? We really wanted
ไม่
to
มี
embrace
บาร์เบเรียน
that
ที่ไหน
in a
เขาใช้
way that
Enigma หรอคอลิน
extended
เคยเล่น
builds
D2 ไหมเนี่ย
and didn't necessarily enforce you must play with this item. And we're really
มันเน
excited
โค
to
เว้ย
share what that's sort of manifested.
ขึ้นเลย
Yeah, and you all have a lot of builds that you started with from the base game. And
มัน
we wanna
ลีฟ
add
ได้
on.
อยู่แล้วมันจะเทเลพอร์ตทำไม make your own spell
So, what are Runewords? They're a way for you to make your own spells. So there are two types of runes. There's runes of ritual, and they specify actions from the player that they have to trigger.
cast
So you can see
skill
the
with a
example here
cooldown
of the Yule rune, which is a legendary quality rune of ritual. You have to cast a skill which has a cooldown. So, you know, Frost Nova or something like that. Then you have runes of invocation. And these grant powerful effects as a result of satisfying those runes of ritual. So the example here, the Gar rune, gives you 2.5% critical strike chance for 5 seconds. And you can stack up to 10 times, up to 25%. And you can mix and match these. There'll be a lot of different runes of ritual and runes of invocation, and you can put them together as you see fit.
ยู
So
กา
when you combine a rune of ritual and rune of
cast
invocation,
a
you pair
skill
them
with a
together,
cooldown หนึ่
you
ง
put
ค
them
รั้
in
ง
an item with 2 sockets, boom, you form a rune word.
อืม
And as you can tell, there's going to be rarity. We're going to have magic, rare, and legendary, and the higher rarity runes will have more potent conditions or effects. So one of the important elements of this is called offering, which is the rune resource system. So your runes of ritual will generate offering, and they're meant to feed into their linked runes of invocation so that they can consume that offering.
อ๋อโอ
And
เค
the sort of
เงื่อน
more
ไขอยู่ข้าง
demanding
บน
rituals that we would ask of you as a
ได้
player
offering และได้
gain
โบ
you
นัส
more
ข้างล่าง
offering.
อ่า
At the
โอ
same
เค
time,
โอ
the
เค
more powerful invocations that you would try to get require more offering, and so there's sort of a like shared economy there. So
มา
you can
นา
look at
คือ
these
offering
runes
คือ
on the
มา
right.
นา
You get 50
ถ้า
offering
ใช้
for
เงื่อนไข
casting
นี้ได้
this
มานา
on
50 มี
cooldown,
มานา
and
เท่า
this
นี้ได้
rune
โบนัส
only
คริต
requires
โอเค
25
เข้าใจละ
offering for it to trigger. That's where overflow comes in.
อืม
Overflow is when an invocation receives an offering in excess of what's needed to trigger it. But put more simply, we want you to have a mix and match system, but we want the pieces to be not
อ๋
super
อแล้วก็
hard.
มี
They can't fit
เกิน
together
ด้วย
easily when they
ถ้า
have some rough
offering
edges.
เกินก็มีโบนัส
So
เพิ่มเข้าไป
many
อีก โอ
invocations
เค
can get different bonus effects when overflowed. Some of them might get increased radius to the effect. Some of them might get increased duration.
โอเคโอเค
But it'll always be proportional to the overflow amount. So as an example here, the Gar rune only requires 25 offering, and it's getting double that, which is 50 from the Yule rune. So every time you cast a skill with a cooldown, you'll get 2 stacks of 2.5% critical strike chance, or 5% crit strike. And so that's kind of how you get to play with this system, and you get to optimize it in different ways.
โอเค
And it creates a lot of flexibility, right? Even like if you do a really demanding ritual trigger, for example, on a really low offering
ใส่ตรงเจมครับใช่ใส่ตรง
rune
เจม
of invocation, it's
ใส่ตรง
almost a
อะไร
way
ก็
to
ได้
start
ที่มี
scaling
ช่อง
that
เจม2 ช่องอะ
version in a completely different
เสื้อ
way
กาง
beyond
เกง
just triggering the rune.
อาวุธ
Exactly. Yeah, it lets us as developers be more flexible in creating wide ranges of effects. Sort of small ones, big ones, and also the same for the rituals. And you get to kind of decide which ones you think fit your build or are cool.
เอาละ
We do our
เรา
best
จะได้
to
เห็น
make
บิล
sure that you can
หลาก
always
หลาย
play
เพิ่ม
with
ขึ้นแล้วล่ะตรงนี้รูนเป็นซ็อกเก็ตไอเทม
So
เป็น
a
ทู
few
ซ็อกเก็ต
rules.
โอเค
Runes can be socketed into items with 2 sockets.
ใช้รูนเวิร์ดได้แค่2รูนเวิร์ดต่อ1
We've
คาแรค
added
เตอร์
another item
ห้าม
with
ใช้
2
รูนเวิร์ด
sockets
เดียว
for
กัน
Vessel of Hatred.
หรือรูนเดียวกัน
You'll
2
have
ครั้ง
your helm, your two-hander, your gloves, and your helm,
รูน
two-hander, pants,
บรรทัดนี้สำคัญสุด รูน
They can only be paired with
สา
a
มารถ
rune
ใช้
type,
ได้
so you
สำหรับ
have to
ค
pair
น
the
ที่
ritual with a
ซื้อ
rune invocation.
expansion
You can
เท่า
have a
นั้น
maximum of 2 rune words equipped. You can't equip the same rune twice, and they're available for users who own Vessel of Hatred. They stack in your inventory in the new socketable inventory tab, which will also have your gems. And runes are tradable between other players who own Vessel of Hatred. And they unlock
รูน
quest in
ดร
the
อป
campaign.
และการคราฟรูนปลดล็อก
Runes dropping
ใน
from
ขณะ
this
ที่เล่น
loot,
เนื้
but
อ
also
เรื่อง
the
ใหม่
crafting, which we'll get into later.
ดรอป ดรอป
And
ตรงไหน
they
ก็
drop
ได้
at a high rate in the Undercity, which is a specific place you can farm them.
ดรอปเยอะ
So
ใน
now let's get into some
แมป
clips
ที่ชื่อว่า
so you
Under
can actually
City
see it in action.
ขอดู
So this is
พ
the
ลังของ
area.
รูนอ่ะ อันนี้มันใส่รูนอะไรอยู่
And
แต่แล้วถอดได้
the
ไหม
rune
ถอดได้ครับ
ritual they have is travel 5 meters. Very simple.
ไม่เหมือนเวอร์ชันเก่าละ
And
อัน
they're
นี้
going to join
เตะ
that to the earthquake, which is a legendary aspect
Ooh.
we've already seen before. which
ทิก
is
เกอร์
called
เอิร์ธเควก
Campfire.
อ่ะโอเคลองใส่
So you see, we'll put them together in
Boom.
this item.
เอา
And then
เอา
all they have to do is just run around.
ปึ้งเอิร์ธเควกก็แค่วิ่งเอิร์ธเควกก็ทำงาน
Insane with the
ให้
Paragon like
เชื่อ
we just talked about.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
the earthquake train is leaving the station.
เฮ้ย เอา
What
อ
I
ยู่
love about this is it doesn't just count your normal walking, right? If you're leaping, if you're charging, that's all counting towards like the distance
ดูดิ
that
วิ่ง
you're
วิ่ง
moving,
อยู่เอิร์ธ
right?
เควกก็ทำงานเอง
Oh,
Yeah.
whoa.
And
Yeah.
you
Whoa,
can
cut
see
the
it
video.
here in like the whirlwind,
Oh.
for instance. Like it's obviously spawning earthquakes. So
Was
โอ้
that a
โห
druid petrify ultimate? This must be the wrong clip. All right, sorry guys. We're doing it live.
ขอดูในโคหน่อย
Let's just move on to the next one. Okay, so we have a
ไล่
necromancer
สกิล
here
ที่
with
ไม่
the
ใช่ส
root
กิล
ritual,
ชาแนล
cast a non-channeled core skill.
บวกเลเวลสกิลเดี๋ยว
And then
เว็ก
this is a classic from D2. Gain +3 to all skills.
ไล่สกิลอะไรก็ได้สกิลบวกเวล3อ่ะตอนนี้สกิลลีฟอยู่
This
เวล
necro's
5
got five skill ranks for Reef
ซิเวอร์
and Sever. And
Ah.
they're gonna
ใช้
go
ส
out
กิล
and capture
ปึ้ง
the
ใช้สกิลดิเอ้ย ใช้สกิลดิ
Harlequin crest, pretty good.
เอ้ยใช้สกิลดิใช้สกิลแล้วเวลขึ้นเป็น8ละ8ละเอาเมาส์ลากแล้วนะพี่
a little pew pew. Just
เมา
doing
ส์ลา
the
กเมาส์
basic,
ลาก
core skill usage, filling up the
Ah.
offering needed.
อ๋อมันใช้ออฟฟิงเยอะมันใช้ออฟฟิงเยอะมันมีเกรดใช่ไหมถ้ามันยังไม่เต็ม
builds up as you're getting it, so you don't need to really micromanage this. You can just
มันเต็มยากเชโคไม่หมดความหมายหรอกมันไม่ได้เต็มตลอดมันไม่ได้ทริกเกอร์ตลอดเหมือนพวกเอิร์ธเควกอะไรเมื่อกี้ไง
So yeah, this necro's just cooking, and oh, what is this? Another broken clip? Did they just cast teleport? What?
เฮ้ย
Okay, I think you guys
teleporting necros. What are you cooking over there, Jeevan?
เมื่อกี้เห็นเนโคเทเลพอร์ต
I'll
ป่ะ
stop making jokes mostly. Yeah, so what we really wanted to
replace your next event with teleport
the ability to cast other classes skills and use their power and harness
จาโอมกลายเป็นอินิกมา
so Runewords, you're going to get to do that. Each class is going to share 2 skills and 1 legendary aspect, like the earthquake one that you saw. And some of them are even going to get to cast improved versions. So for instance, instead of the standard Decrepify from the Necromancer, you get to cast Horrid Decrepify, which is the upgraded version. And that's we did that for a lot of reasons. We wanted to make some of them feel a little better and a little more powerful, and a lot of it is about balance. But one important thing that I always want to highlight here is that you always cast the best version of the skill if you have upgrades as the sort of home owner of the class, right? So what that means is, let's say you're a Spiritborn and you equip the Cry rune, which is the Vortex spell. If you have points into the upgrade, then you'll cast the upgraded Vortex when the rune goes off. So I don't think there'll be any class envy. Like everyone will get the best version of their own skills, and then they'll get to use other classes' skills. And we're really excited to see how people can construct new builds and new archetypes and what they can do with using the power of the classes.
And that says enhanced war cry, so that means necros can become berserk, right?
That indeed does mean that, and that enhanced war cry is a winner. I gotta say that one's real strong. We've already seen people just chopping up the pit with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Really looking forward to what kind of interesting new combinations and builds you can come up with by dipping into other class skills in unique ways.
รูนผสมได้เหมือนกับใน D2 นะ
multiplies the possibilities of what you can do with any given class.
Yeah, exactly. And not only do we want you to augment your builds with other classes' skills, but runes will scale with gear. So when you get more interesting runes of rituals, you'll find ways to optimize them as well and get more output. So we really feel like people will have a lot of theory crafting that they can build off of the Runeword system, and I'm very excited to see how you break the game. By the way, that's what she's doing.
ไม่เอาจริงว่ะ
break the game.
Magic และ Runeword are used มีโอกาสที่โลยูนให้เป็น
So now we have the crafting element. So
Mythic
using 3 of the
unique
same rune, you can use them to roll a new rune. You go to the jeweler, or it might
รู
not
น
be the
สามารถ
jeweler,
ใช้เพื่อคราฟมิติกยูนิค
and
ได้ฮะ
you will combine 3 of the same exact rune, and you'll get a new rune out that is guaranteed to be different.
ใช้รูนผสมกับสปาร์คคราฟอูเบอร์
And there's a chance to uproll it to the next highest rarity. So if you put 3 magic runes in, there's a chance that it'll be a rare
ระบบ
rune.
เก่ายังอยู่ระบบ
Same
ใหม่
with-
เพิ่ม
same
ขึ้น
with rare. There's a chance that it'll be a legendary rune. And then on top of that, we'll have the ability to craft mythic uniques. So you can use runes. Each mythic unique can be crafted with a specific set of runes. You'll need a legendary, rare, and magic runes of a certain quantity, and 1 resplendent spark. And this is in addition to the existing mythic unique crafting flow. So yeah.
Really... I was just going to say, this really harkens back to the sort of crafting that was so core in D2, with the runes of being able to match 3 and get the next upgrade, but in a way that's a little bit more flexible and gives you more progression out of it. And this is all tradable, right? So that match 3, those crafting mythic uniques, what do you think that's going to do with trading?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to really build a sort of player community around how to acquire the runes you need, whether it's because you want to combine, you have 2 and you want to find that 3rd one to combine for a new one, or you're hunting for a specific mythic unique. I think we're going to have a lot of player interaction, and well, someone's going to win the capitalism game there, so we'll see how that goes.
I really like how the rune crafting system makes it so you're kind of always progressing, right? If you're getting rune drops, then you're getting materials that you can use to progress towards higher rarity runes and potentially towards these mythic unique items. Unlike some of the other loot drops, if you don't find a good piece of gear, it just ends up being salvage. Here with runes, you're kind of constantly getting some of that progression, even if it's not always the perfect rune right now.
เห็นด้วย
Yeah, I think
นะครับ
that's
ระบบ
something
รูน
that
เนี่ยมันดู
we
มี
did
ความ
talk
หมาย
to
กว่าไอ
a
เทม
lot
ธรรม
of
ดาเนาะ
people.
เพราะถ้าเราได้รูนขยะ
P2
มา
diehards
รูนขยะ3 อันกลายเป็นรูนเกือบ
One
ข
of the
ยะ
things
รูนเกือบ
that
ขยะ
most
3 อัน
Legend
กลายเป็นรูน
Expansion
ปกติ
consists
รูน
of
ปก
is
ติ 3
every
อัน
rune
กลายเป็น
drops
รูน ดี
progress,
รูน
right?
ดี
You're
3
always
อันกลายเป็น
moving
รูน
up that
ดี
ladder.
มาก รูน
So we
ดี
wanted
มาก
to make
3 อั
sure
นกลาย
that
เป็นรูน
even
เท
if you
พ
didn't get
รูนเทพ
feedback,
3 อัน
if
กลาย
you
เป็นรูน
wanted,
โค
you
ตร
could
เท
still
พ
lend something to one way or another.
มันทำให้การฟาร์มมันไม่ดูไร้
Well, I know
จุดมุ่งหมาย
we've talked a lot about a lot of stuff today. We had progression, itemization. We talked about quality of life. We talked about class changes, and of course, the newest thing, which is Runeword, which will be in Vessel of Hatred. But the one thing we did want to quickly talk about was PTR. PTR is coming up. And we want to give a little bit, or at least some specifics on what that PTR test is going to be, and also hear from the team on exactly like what they're looking for from you guys out there that are playing, like for feedback as you guys play through the systems. Everything that we've actually talked about today is going to be present.
ทุกอย่างที่พูดในวันนี้อยู่ใน
So,
PTR ทั้งหม
all
ด
the class balance changes, the progression changes, rune words will also be part of
Runeword ก็เช่นกัน
So we actually do want players jumping in and checking it out. So let's jump right into some of the PTR items. So as everyone knows, PTR
Campaign
from even
completion
the last PTR that we
ม้า
had
Fog
will
of
carry
War
over
Altar of
content from your
Lilith
main account. So if you've already done all your renown, cleared your Fog of War, your Altar of Lilith status will carry over onto your PTR account.
กี่ขั้น
We
นะ
did
เปล่า
do a
ผม
character
จินตนา
copy as
การ
well.
จำนวน
It
ขั้น
was
ขึ้นมา
a
ปก
while
ติ
back.
รูนมีเป็น
So
10 20 กว่าอันนะครับ
there
เหมือนตัวอักษร
you may find that it might be a little dated from like the character copy that you have on live, but that will exist.
3 กำลัง 20
actually use.
คุณเอาเวิร์ส
One thing I will note is that we are planning on having 2 different testing phases for PTR specifically. The first testing phase will actually begin next Wednesday and will run through Friday, about midday, where we're going to actually give players the opportunity of kind of just starting characters from fresh because we really need people to try out the new progression systems that Colin and Aislinn were talking about specifically in the beginning of the stream. So Wednesday through midday Friday, we really need players to jump in, check that out, give us feedback specifically regarding anything tied to the new progression systems. Around midday on Friday, though, we will be turning on the rest of the PTR, which will include things like rune words and all the other features that we were kind of talking about, all the other features will be part of it, but rune words and things like that will be turning in on Friday. One thing that we've heard from feedback from players specifically, especially as we have addressed this in the past, is that there is going to be a boost vendor available for this PTR. So in Kiovashad, players will be able to go and visit this specific vendor. This is the best video that I was talking about because this Fallen is dancing and it looks absolutely amazing. This vendor will be available and you'll be able to interact with it. And this vendor will actually then be able to provide you a ton of enhancements to your character, which we do have a list of here. So you will be able to boost your character up to level 50. Level 60, of course, which is the new level cap after Vessel of Hatred actually ships. We will end up clearing out your whole map, your waypoints, Fog of War. We will do your class mechanic stuff and have that already unlocked. All Torment tiers will be unlocked. Your potions will be upgraded completely. And then I know based off of feedback that we got from like the last PTR was, hey, it'd be great if we could generate like legendary items, if we can get all the unique items, all the runes, or well, that's new now, but all the runes and everything like that, including masterworking materials, that will actually be available in this vendor. So this is a way for players to be more efficient while testing and being able to give us more feedback, especially around endgame related items. So we really need players to jump in for PTR. One last caveat I do want to mention is Infernal Hordes will not be available in this specific PTR. We are still doing some work on that right now before we actually get it ready, but all the other features within the game will be available. Infernal Hordes, as I mentioned, it's a permanent feature, so it's coming back to the game no matter what. And then separately, I do want to remind everyone that PTR right now it is still just PC BattleNet only. This does give us the flexibility of being able to upload, change things on the fly, like things like turning rune words on Friday, for instance, gives us we have the flexibility of being able to do that on our own platform. So it's just easier for us to be able to have that additional work from our side to be able to make
แต่ไม่
things
แน่
like
นะ
that happen.
เพราะ Runeword มันก็มากับ expansion ใหม่นะ
But Colin, Aislinn, I'd be really curious to hear like what you guys are looking for specifically in this PTR from feedback from players that they can focus in on and provide feedback on as they go into the test.
Yeah, so I think we really want to see people focusing on the new journey. So starting from level 1 and feeling out what difficulty tier is right for you. And if that feels like it's the difficulty tier that you would expect to be on based on how powerful you've managed to make your character and how many of the progression systems you've engaged with. Like if you engage with tempering and you go all out and you know, like you're like, I'm going to make my character a blaster, even though they're only level 30, like how far can you go with that? And are you going as far as you expected you would be able to go?
Yeah, those are great points. It really is about, you know, are we hitting that expectation that we've sort of created, right? Which is, we really loved how the mind cage was functioning. We loved how tormented bosses felt in terms of having hard mode versions of things. Are these difficulty tiers sort of meeting those expectations of all the things that we have had in the previous game now mapped to a more streamlined system that should be much easier to navigate?
Awesome. And I know on the class side, like Charles, what are you kind of looking for? What's the team looking for on that front?
Yeah, I think we're really looking at the new skills and the new key passives for each class and how they're usable at all points in your character journey, right? They should feel good to press when you just first learn these new skills. But they should also feel really good when you're in the late game and you're trying to, you know, make a build all around them, right? Around your stone burst. Like, does it feel like that has enough support and that you can, you know, make a stone burst build or dance of knives and or all the other different skills? Like, do they fit in? What's their appropriate power level? And we really want to make sure that the new skills and the new key passives enable new ways of playing our classes and that they feel satisfying to build that way.
Awesome. And Jeevan, I know you mentioned to everyone, break the game with Runeword. So is there maybe any more extra items you're looking for in terms of feedback?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely mostly about that. I want to see what people come up with. I want to see, you know, what you can cook in terms of builds. You can do something fun or cool or unexpected. And also, you know, I'm highly interested in the sort of balanced feedback. I think we'll get it from all of you, but we've had a lot of people on the team work very hard on conceptualizing how to make sure this stuff is right on the edge of broken without actually being broken. And you'll get to prove me wrong if that isn't the case. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I know we do want to jump into a little bit of Q&A before we kind of wrap up. I know we've been here for a little while, so we'll try to grab some questions specifically from Twitch chat. I know probably the most popular question right now from the community is about armory, and I do want to start off with that specifically. And I do also want to just confirm that we are working on an armory.
working on
the
armory
team
นะ
is
ครับ
cooking
ยั
on
ง
it
ไม่เสร็จ
right now.
พิทยา
We
วันไหน
just don't have it
วัน
ready
พุธครับ
immediately,
พุธหน้า
but as soon as we have an update, we will be providing that to the community. There is work for an armory happening. We're not purposely ignoring it, I promise you. And it is in the works specifically from that end. So I know we have questions from Twitch chat, so this is where I actually like butcher everyone's names. So in standard fashion, I will continue to do that. It's just a little different now because I actually like have a screen in front of me, which is actually really beneficial. But I guess we'll start off with a question regarding the different difficulty tiers. So this is from Double DHZ, which is since we now have 8 difficulties, does this mean with power increase in later seasons, more difficulties will be added? Are we planning on adding
คำถามคือตอนนี้ต้องมีระดับความยาก 8 อันในอนาคตพอซีซั่นใหม่ๆเข้ามามันจะมีระดับความยากเพิ่มขึ้นมาอีกไหม
Yeah, we want to be really measured in terms of when we add difficulty tiers. I think it sets us up for adding them when we feel like it's an appropriate time. We don't want to get to a spot where we have 20 different difficulty tiers. We want to have just enough granularity to support the amount of power that we're adding. And what we don't want to do is sort of say, okay, we're going to add things like rune words or add things like seasonal powers and then nerf all of you by making the monsters 100% tankier to compensate for the power. We'd actually rather create a system that when you get that new power, we're going to add another band of difficulty to get even more efficiency out of that power. So that's been the sort of guiding light, is we don't want to continue to sort of nerf players into a spot where they can sort of use all this new power to push. A great example of that is previously in seasons, we would actually increase monster health to compensate for some of the seasonal powers. Now, if you get seasonal powers, if you're blasting Penitent and leveling to 60 faster, good for you. Like, that's something that we think is actually really important to the system.
Awesome. I know next question that we have, this is a question I've seen a decent amount. This is from Explosive Cat. Hopefully your cat is not exploding. What's the purpose of Nightmare Dungeons now that glyphs have moved?
Nightmare Dungeon จะเอาไว้ทำอะไรเพราะตอนนี้กลิฟอัพในพิษแล้
Yeah,
ว
so Nightmare Dungeons are going to be where you receive your masterworking materials.
ต่อไปนี้
And
Master Working
because Nightmare Dungeons
Material
are
จะ
going to
ได้
be
จาก
following
Nightmare Dungeon แทน
the difficulty tier system now, you're going to be
Okay.
able to go
สลับ
into
ที่กัน
higher torment tiers, or rather higher difficulty tier Nightmare Dungeons, and get more masterwork materials out of that. So just like, you know, all other kinds of content in the game now, being able to go into a
สลับ
higher
กันนั่นแหละเอาง่าย
difficulty of that activity is going to ultimately be better for you.
Yeah, the grind, sort of putting a grind currency actually fits much better in a Nightmare Dungeon compared to the Pit, because it means that every sort of elite you kill, every chest you open, or every corner you go into and you find an elite pack, those are going to be masterworking materials, as opposed to today where it's like, well, the instant I make a turn
Make
that
sense.
is not in the
นี่ครับ
direction of
มีเหตุ
finishing
ผล
this dungeon has
อย่าง
been
ที่บอกว่า
reduced
Nightmare
down to
Dungeon
times
เวลา
like
เรา
that.
ฆ่ามอนส
It's
เตอ
like
ร์ข้าง
playing
ใน
a completely
มอนสเตอร์
changes
ทุกตัวก็
what
มีโอ
every
กาส
new
ดรอป
dungeon is
Material
from
ในการ
masterworking materials, and we think
ตี
that
บวก
feels
ให้เรา
so much better
นะ
for
ครับ
that type
แทน
of
ที่จะเป็น
content.
เหมือนอันเดิม
Conversely, you know,
ที่
with
ดร
the
อปเฉ
Pit,
พาะตอนฆ่า
you
บอ
know,
สได้
again, we're going to reward you for pushing difficulty, and we do want you to sort of get there quickly and get that reward and get out. So we think that'll feel a lot better.
Yeah, so just for people, because I think when they immediately heard like, well, now it's just moved to Nightmare Dungeons and it's just at the end. It's actually part of the whole Nightmare Dungeon. It's not just
Yeah.
the end goal, getting to the end and getting, you know, masterworking materials there. Just want to clarify for
Yeah,
chat,
there's
because I know
definitely
immediately
a
they're
good amount. There's a good amount
at
at
the
the end
yeah.
when you kill the boss, right? Of course, the boss has to have good shit, but like, what's really gonna feel great is like when you run into a massive elite pack, like you just randomly run into, you know, we spawned maybe too many. Those are all gonna represent, you know, little loot bags of masterwork.
Inferno Pit ไม่ได้เอาออกครับ แค่ไม่อยู่ใน PTR แต่มันเป็นคอนเทนต์หลักครับ
This question is from RXU 105. Are runes reusable?
Yeah. So, by the way, I just want to say, chat, I've been reading Twitch chat, and what you've said has struck a chord. Anyway, yes, they will be reusable. You could...
Can't take you anywhere.
You could unsocket runes and you can move them into different items. Yes, absolutely. I saw a few related questions to that. They don't get to exist in the same item as gems. You do have to pick between gems and runes on any individual item.
ต้องเลือกว่าจะใส่อะไรในชุดจะใส่รูนหรือใส่เจม
Awesome.
และใครจะไปใส่เจมวะ
I know there was a question related to another, well, at least, I don't know if Charles, you want to answer this, or if you have additional details. There's a lot of questions related to one of the mythic uniques, and it's additive damage to demons and angels.
มีคนสงสัยเหมือนผมเลย บวกดาเมจ ต่อ
want
ดีมอน
to
แล้วก็ angels
talk about
I will
that.
confirm that is the wording on the effect. Plus damage to angels and demons.
มอสบอกว่า
There you
เดฟ
go,
บอกว่าเป็น
guys.
มอสที่ถูกต้อง
We'll just
แต่ว่าใน
leave
อนา
it
คต
at
เราจะได้
that.
สู้กับ angels
And
No further
I know, yeah, no further
No
comment
comment
on
นะครับ
that.
ไม่มีข้อมูลเพิ่ม
Additional
เติมให้
question that we have related to Paragon is, why cap the amount of boards and instead of just capping maybe the amount of glyphs we can use? This is from Hotner.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Something that I think we can take back and really think about. We had discussed, and we felt like the cleanest solution from just sort of the flow perspective was that we wanted to just make it really sort of compact and make those choices about which glyphs and which legendary nodes and eventually what rare and magic nodes matter to you. But that's really good feedback and something we can continue to monitor as we go into PTR and as people get their hands on it. Again, it's really about making those boards more punchy, and the connections between those boards is something that you navigate during your journey. But the sort of end point is about making those really chunky choices on what glyphs you want and what legendary nodes you want. And we think that
คำถามคือ
ultimately,
ทำไมแคป
especially now that Paragon
จำนวน
is
บอร์ด
realm-wide,
ที่
all your
อัพ
alts,
ได้
I
ใน
think we
Paragon
touched
ทำ
on
ไม
that
ไม่แคป
earlier,
จำน
all
วน
your
กลิฟ
alts get to benefit from this. It's really going to streamline that process of getting your points locked in
คำตอบ
quickly
ก็
on
คือ
those
บอร์ด
alt
มัน
characters
โกง
and
กว่า
get
กลิฟ
into the end
นะครับ
game really quickly. But that's a really good point of feedback.
A question from WTF, Akalaka. I don't know. See, this is bad. Yeah, you get the point. Well, everyone need to be in Kyovashad to change difficulty like it is currently right now.
That's a good question. We've
เปลี่ยนระ
added
ดับความยาก
actually,
ต้อง
yeah, so
ไปเมืองหลัก
you could
โค
imagine
ชัดทุก
how
ครั้งไหม
obnoxious it would be to do the pit in Karagar and then have to go to Kyovashad to then unlock the new torment tier that you just got. So we actually added difficulty tier selectors
คำตอบคือ
in
ไม่
Karagar as well as Kyovashad, in addition to Kyovashad. And then we also have one in Kurast, and there's also another one, I think, near the Dark Citadel entrance. We've added them in a few locations
มีที่เปลี่ยนประ
across
มาณ
the game
4-5
just to
ที่
make
ในเกม
that a little bit of a better experience.
Question from a few people. There's like Corinter. There's another question from 9 Tons of Pain. Are glyphs kind of shared between all characters in the realm, or do they have to be leveled up separately?
So those are still leveled up separately, but that's something like going forward, we definitely want to emphasis on like making alt more seamless to play into, and we definitely
กลิฟ
there's some
แยกตัว
underlying
ละครอั
feedback
พเว
back,
ล
which is wouldn't it be great if the
เล่นเน
Paragon
โค
glyphs
สาม
were
ตัวก็อัพ
Campfire?
กลิฟเนโค
Like,
3 รอบ
yeah, that's something we can take back to the team, and philosophically, we really want to start moving towards a direction where making alts is really easy to get into and feel powerful. So that's something we can definitely take note of.
And I'll also highlight that, right, because the Paragon points are shared account wide or realm wide, as it were. If you make a new character, you're going to get a ton of Paragon points right away, which increases your power level, which maybe means you take on a higher pit tier, and then you get the catch-up mechanic on leveling up those glyphs. So it is a little bit easier for your alts to level up those glyphs as well, even if it's not 100% shared.
Yeah, that's very true. You can level them up really fast in the pit if you're pushing deep.
There is a question regarding Eternal Realm characters, like, what happens to them when 2.0 kind of launches? What's the, like,
ตัวละคร
I'm
เก่า
assuming
ที่เลเวล
because they
100
already
เวลา
have kind of
2.0
gear
เริ่มแล้วมันจะเป็น
this
ยังไง
level, they'll be brought down to that new eye level that we had mentioned. Is there like any specific changes or anything, or is it kind of laid out exactly kind of how we presented?
Oh, I can answer this.
Yeah.
So we are doing some adjustments for those Eternal players who really like to play the game on one character. We wanted to make sure that there was new loot to chase. We also just needed to make sure that with the new character level adjustments, we sort of had to adjust the eye power of items now that the fact that the max character level is 60. In addition to our goals of really sort of creating more grounded numbers, it does mean level 50 is getting an eye power adjustment, as well as the affixes are being adjusted. But we are going to max roll every single affix that we adjusted power-wise. So, for example, if you get a 5, we're going to take those items and adjust them. We aren't going to re-roll those affix bands. Like if you had perfect affixes, we're just going to essentially max roll all of them within that band. So there's no feels bad about, I had this perfect item and you ruined it by readjusting it. But the sort of main takeaway there is we wanted to make sure in patch 2.0 that there was new loot to chase. We wanted to make sure that the new uniques had a place to sing. And that's all sort of in service to that, for that type of Eternal player who really likes that sort of long form progression.
ยังไม่รู้เลยว่าตัวละครจะทำ
Awesome.
ยังไง
Question from Ice Panther. Runewords, are they applicable to all items and weapons? Or are they restricted to specific types of equipment?
รูนเวิร์ดใส่ได้เฉพาะในอาวุธหรือว่าในเสื้อหรือว่าในกางเกงอะไรอย่างนี้ไหม
Yeah, they can be inserted into all types of equipment.
ใส่ที่ไหนก็ได้
restricted
คำตอบ
from being in uniques as long as you have 2 sockets for that unique. And
ขอแค่มี2รู
to restate the slots that are available with 2 sockets. On base game it's 3. It's chest, pants, and 2-hander. We're also adding a second socket to helm, so you'll have 4 slots. And you cannot mix runes with gems in any item, and you wouldn't want to. You'd basically be losing the benefit of them.
Awesome. I know we have some questions related to like some co-op bugs. I will say that I've gone on, I know, like forums and Reddit and addressed at least addressed them.
ไปในอาวุธ
we are
บาส
working
ใส่
on
ได้
them.
5
My
รูน
team
เวิร์ดนะครับ
is most definitely working on them right
หม
now.
วกเสื้อกางเกง อาวุธ 2 ข้าง
Still getting over my sickness. And then I know this is actually a pretty. I'm going to ask this because it's a funny question. Are there runes for G and then Vun?
Oh, I mean, my narcissism certainly would have let me do that, but I think we can't do that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, I would have loved to. But I will say, there are, the runes have these sort of phrases that they unlock when you actually compose the spells. And we have some, I think, fun references and Easter eggs to, the great Diablo games of the past. And so hopefully that'll kind of make you smile when you see them.
Awesome. And then runes, are they stackable?
Yeah, they are stackable, and we have added a new tab for them as well. We have a socketable tab. So all your runes and gems will go there.
เก็บได้มากกว่า 1 อัน
So
สแต็กได้
would be pretty good for you.
ไม่กินพื้นที่
Yeah, that would have been really messing with inventory if runes did not stack, and now that they have their own tab. Yeah, and now they have their own tab, which is really, really good. So cool. I know we are very over on time. So I do want to make sure that we let everyone go here so that they can eat, because we've now gone well past lunch over here in California. Just a reminder for everyone that PTR is actually going to be starting next Wednesday. We will have patch notes and the blog up immediately after
เที่ยงคืนวันพฤหัสที่จะถึง
here,
นะ
so
ครั
you
บ
guys can
สำหรับ PTR
check out the patch notes. It's 17,000 words, a lot of words, so I apologize.
Patch note
I will say that for other
17,000 คำ
locales, it might be until like early next week before those patch notes will be available. It just takes a while for us to localize on some of those, and it kind of came in a little hot. So we do plan on actually having that available in all languages. Just for now, they will be English only and immediately up after this specific stream.
เฉพาะภาษาอังกฤษเท่านั้น
Again, PTR starts next Wednesday. We'll have 2 different phases. Wednesday through Friday will be that first initial phase where we need players jumping in, checking out the progression changes and testing all that out. And then starting on Friday for the rest of the week specifically, we'll end up having the boost vendor available where players can actually jump in and test out everything that they need to regarding rune words and all other things that are tied to Endgame. I do want to give a huge thanks to everyone on this panel here.
ขอบคุณทุกคน
Colin,
Colin
Charles,
Erslin
thank you so
Charles
much for
จิวุน
going
นะครับ
through a ton of information. I do want to
และ
also
แน่นอน
call
Don
out
Fletcher
the rest of the Diablo team because they have been doing a ton of work towards Vessel of Hatred and of course patch 2.0 and season 6. One thing we will say is that you guys actually haven't heard about season 6 yet. We still have information to tell you about season 6. We'll be sharing that more here in the
นี่ยังไม่รวม
coming
คอนเทนต์ใน
weeks
ซีซั่น
launch.
6 อีก
So there
โอ้โห
is
อะไรวะ
still
ยอด
a seasonal
คุณคำรณทันจิโร่ไปเจอกันครับ
with
ขอบคุณมาก
season 6 that we'll be sharing here soon. So thank you guys, everyone, and thank you Diablo community for tuning in. Check out diablo4.com immediately after the stream.
อย่าลืม
And we'll see you guys in Sanctuary. Thanks again.
ไว้เจอกันทุกคน
Thanks, everyone.
หลับวันดีราตรีสวัสดิ์ครับ
Oh, we're
ขอบคุณมากวัน
ending
นี้
with this best. I love it.
We can't forget the most important member of the team.
บาย